Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 301, Karma Fire. Lily hailed from the Demon Knight. She had slender legs and malicious aura. After Zen's visit to the Killing Sword Mountain, she became his sword spirit. Zen commanded Lily to take the sword and attack while he evaded attacks from the two palms. There was no time for Zen to think about other things, as the slightest distraction would lead to a mistake, and the two big palms would hit Zen. But, when Zen could not avoid Akalanatha's palms, he caught a glimpse out of the corner of his eye and was shocked. Lily began to rotate as soon as she held the streamer sword. At the same time, her malicious aura formed a helix, as if a storm were materializing around her, and then rushed to Patrick at high speed. She seemed to be dancing. And the sword was a prop in her dance, a dance that brought death. What is this sword trick? Zen was dazed. Although Lily was Zen's sword spirit, he didn't know her. So far, Zen had summoned her and then attached her to his sword. Aside from her enchanting appearance, Lily was no different from the other sword spirits Zen had seen on the Killing Sword Mountain. Zen had encountered a variety of sword spirits while at the Killing Sword Mountain. These varied from primary forms of sword spirits that had no shape at all, to only being points of light. And as Zen climbed higher, the sword spirits became more advanced. Many sword spirits had forms, of which the most common was the human form. Even so, these sword spirits were near mindless. Basically, they could not speak, and their faces lacked expressions. Except for Isinai whom Zen had encountered at the end. Isinai manipulated his sword spirit by injecting a touch of his soul into it. But there was no soul inside Lily. This was why Zen felt strange when she used such an unusual attack skill after Zen summoned her. As Lily spun faster and faster, the number of malicious aura spirals increased. In the beginning, Patrick didn't care too much about Zen's sword spirit. All he needed to do was concentrate on driving the body of Akalanatha. As for the sword spirit, even if she were holding the streamer sword, all Patrick had to do was dodge her attacks. It was beyond Patrick's expectation that Zen's sword spirit could control a sword so skillfully. What was this sword trick? It was a dance. The difference was that Lily was using a sword trick in her sword dance. She had a real sword. Unsure of whether he could escape from Lily's unusual sword dance, Patrick had to withdraw a palm from his attack on Zen and aim it at Lily. After one of the hands was withdrawn, the pressure on Zen reduced. Patrick could not juggle two attacks simultaneously. So it was impossible for him to handle Zen and his sword spirit at the same time. That was why Patrick decided to crush Lily first. That would earn him more time. The Akalanatha palm was extremely fast. Patrick envisioned the huge fingers would grab Lily in the blink of an eye, and then squeeze hard. However, Lily's intensity not only exceeded Patrick's imagination, but it also went far beyond Zen's assumptions. Apparently, Lily was strong. Akalanatha's hand had smashed Roche's heavenly punishment sword once. But it was not impressive when compared with Lily's sword dance. As the streamer sword swirled in circles, its tip drew lines of malicious aura. The spiral-shaped malicious aura burst and covered Lily. She was like a hedgehog now. One could imagine what Akalanatha's palm would end up with. Not only was the huge palm smashed, but the fingers had also been cut off. And Lily did not stop there. Since Zen had commanded her to attack, she wouldn't be still until she had reached her target, Patrick. Patrick felt helpless. He had not underestimated Zen. On the contrary, although he had accurately estimated Zen's strength, he hadn't been able to imagine everything Zen was capable of. The first thing that surprised Patrick was Zen's strength. He didn't know why Zen was so strong. Even his physical strength was beyond the limits of a human body. Where did his strength come from? What was his secret? What astonished Patrick, even more, were the anomalies in Zen's flesh. His body was in the diamond-like state and was unlike human flesh. While these were two aspects that Patrick could bring himself to accept, there was one beyond his understanding. Like Zen's sword spirit, Patrick could see that this sword spirit had formed not long ago. Zen had been able to give a newborn sword spirit shape. Patrick could see that Zen was a true talent and a rare opponent. Most ordinary people would be unable to match him. Even though he was able to give the sword spirit a form, how could she be that strong? A sword spirit with a sword trick. An unfathomable sword trick. Patrick had nothing to say now. And Patrick was not the only one who was left speechless. So were the 100,000 witnesses. Lily's long, straight, white legs gleamed among the spirals of malicious aura. Her face was expressionless but young and beautiful, as if she were a Valkyrie, sent down to earth by the heavens. Her sword dance was impressive, and so was her sword trick. Also, her dance was enchanting and moving. Nimble on her feet, Lily was not only gracious but as fierce as a dragon. Her long hair flew with her movements and covered half her face, like the lotus jade. Unable to defend against the sword dance, Patrick was forced to retreat. Seeing this, a fierce discussion began among the crowd. I am jealous. Why didn't something like this happen to me? I wish that I had such an amazing sword spirit. I would spend my days just watching her. Jealous. I am more than jealous. I want to bow in worship to the sword spirit. Is she really a sword spirit? Who can tell me whether or not she is a real sword spirit? She is a goddess. I'll tell you the best way to get a sword spirit like her. Dream. There may be a beautiful sword spirit in your dream. Do you want it in real life? Not even in your next life. Yan kept an eye on the whole process. She bit her lip as she tried to control her erratic breathing. She was unsure of what Zen had gone through, and what changes had happened to him. These changes and experiences had helped her elder brother to master endless ways of fighting, ways that could be used individually as a trump card if put on others. My brother is too strong. Rocher watched and shook his head again. Patrick's palms could easily break his heavenly punishment sword, but it could do nothing to Zen's sword spirit. This was too strange and hard to accept. In a way, Rocher's attitude was expected, as Zen had also used his sword spirit when fighting him. But Zen had summoned Lily into his sword at that time and had been inspired by Lily's malicious aura when attacking his opponent. The problem was that Zen didn't practice the skills of using malicious aura. And so, his application of the malicious aura was at a very low level, and he had relied entirely on the power of the malicious aura to break the heavenly punishment. Sword. Lily knew sword tricks and used the power of the unusual sword dance to exert the malicious aura efficiently. This was what Zen had not thought of doing. In other words, Lily seemed stronger than Zen. Under the situation, Patrick was finally forced to the edge of the fight field. Behind him was the light curtain formed by the enchanted barrier. He was left with only two options, except defeat or face Lily's sword dance. In other words, he had no way back. Seeing that Lily was nearing, Patrick closed his palms again. There was a Buddha seal in his eye, a golden Buddha seal. Suffering in the body is good for the mind. Do not be shaken by the outside world. Allow no distraction in the heart. Patrick began chanting. As Lily's sword dance approached, he seemed to give up resistance. But the Buddha seal in his eye suddenly broke, and its contents filled the pupil of his right eye. It now appeared as though his right eye was shining with gold. Everyone knew that Patrick was about to make a big move. But Patrick had already applied the Akalanatha's virtual shadow. What else could be stronger than the Akalanatha's virtual shadow? Of course, after the golden light bloomed in his right eye, the right eye of the Akalanatha's virtual shadow. From behind him was also filled with the golden light. And under the shining golden light, the broken palm of Akalanatha's virtual shadow was condensed again. The moment the palm was condensed, Patrick once again put his hands together. When he pulled them apart, a flame appeared in his hands. It was a black cyan flame. The action corresponded with the palm of the Akalanatha's virtual shadow. A bigger cyan flame appeared between the giant palms. Green Lotus Karma Fire. Chapter 302. Going Crazy. Evil karma could scorch a person like fire, so the name of karma fire was given. That was a purely evil fire, which among other things, was also the name of the fire set in hell by the guilty. In Buddhism, there were two kinds of fire that were the most powerful, both equally as strong. One was the emptiness fire of the bodhisattvas and the other was the karma fire. Known to all were the unimaginable virtuous merits of the bodhisattvas, and how karma touched all creatures was unfathomable. I believe the Green Lotus lives in a corrupted, evil world, but it remains unaffected. It yearns to burn everything throughout the world and turn it in, forget endlessly burning fires. The burning green lotus karma fire that appeared in Patrick's hand, divided into two flames. One was large, and the other was small. The small one had hundreds of lotus blossoms and tried to burn Lily, while the vast green lotus karma fire in Akalanatha's virtual shadow hand immediately slammed to the ground. The power of the green lotus karma fire was incomprehensible. After the small karma fire lunged at the normally malicious, aggressive Lily, she lost the spirit to fight, unexpectedly. Although Lily had much malicious aura, and she wasn't weak, there was no way she would be able to resist for long. Zen saw that and got her to retreat with the steamer sword. Lily transformed into blips of bright light before re-entering Zen's body, and Zen quickly placed the steamer sword into his space ring. Step by step, Zen fought Patrick, and forcibly made him release the fires. The commoners were enraged, and blood splattered all around within 5 steps. If the emperor was furious, millions of people would die. Everything worldwide would burn when the Buddha was seething. The green lotus karma fire spread with an overwhelming momentum, making it hard for the cloud sect's 100,000 disciples on the field to breathe. There was screaming and yelling as they panicked, bolting and trampling each other as they scurried for safety. Some disciples were smarter. They watched the others as though it were a play, even though, if the green lotus karma fire kept burning, everything would turn into dust. Such things had occurred several times before, when battles on the competition field injured spectating disciples, like the time the dragon roared during Zen's competition against Jacques, which left many disciples at the All Peaks competition wounded. Although the competing disciples at the All Peaks competition were the top ranked of each peak, there were about 100,000 disciples watching them today, and they were much weaker than the ones before. If they hadn't run, they would be burned to dust now. However, the Buddha was able to restrain the karma fire and wouldn't let it hurt innocent creatures. When the immense green lotus karma fire that was in the hand of the Akalanatha virtual shadow smashed, suddenly, obscure, mysterious symbols appeared on the ground of the field, imprisoning the massive green lotus karma fire. Around them, the elders noticed Patrick's blow was too powerful, and they prepared to steady the light curtain of the enchanted barrier by joining hands. But they stopped, standing there staring, as they noticed that the green lotus karma fire wasn't spreading beyond the field. It was being contained. One of the elders shook his head and sighed, "The fire of the Buddha is special. I've never seen a cultivation method able to restrict its power to spread." The elder speaking had such strength and insight that he could launch as powerful an attack as Patrick, but he wasn't able to limit the power within the competition field precisely. Since the flame can't spread, it is more concentrated on the field, and its power is more focused and more powerful. Zen must be miserable, added another elder as he bobbed his head in agreement. As the disciples noticed that the horrible green lotus karma fire wouldn't spread beyond the field, they calmed down. But the area and Zen were engulfed in the burning karma fires. The karma fire had a peculiar effect, though. With only a glance, the onlookers would feel their emotions being stirred as their darkest deeds resurfaced within, and left them with the feelings of blame rising, which would incinerate them. Wow, I am merely watching the flames, and my eyes ache. How much more intense this is in the field. I wonder how it will feel being burned in it. Why not go find out? Since the karma fire is from the lowest regions of torture, it will surely make you happy. I wonder how Zen will feel in the karma fire. Can he resist the karma fire's unpleasant burning? At this juncture, most people weren't worried whether Zen would win or lose, but they were too concerned about his safety. After all, Patrick's karma fire heck was so dreadful and was a deadly kill. They thought it was a mistake earlier, when Zen kept constantly pushing Patrick, who was Akalanatha's reincarnation. Why would Zen think anything good would come from harassing Buddha? As the Cloud Sect's most talented disciple throughout history, would Zen have his downfall? Nina's face was etched with deep lines of worry. She might be down because Zen's performance outshone hers, but that didn't mean she didn't care about him. Just then, the onlookers saw a single person trying to walk onto the field. It was Yan. She didn't know if her elder brother could survive the karma fire hell, and all she knew was that she couldn't stand by, doing nothing, while he was in danger. Yan summoned her life vitality into a streamer to get closer to the field quickly. The life vitality formed a circle and flew around her. Instantly, it turned into spikes of flashes of black light. She knew she had to break the enchanted barrier before getting onto the field. Just then one of the elders appeared in front of Yan, blocking her. "You aren't allowed to enter the field. There hasn't been a declaration of who the winner or loser is," said the elder as he authoritatively floated there with his hands clasped behind him. Yan had competed in the All Peaks competition. How could she not know the rules? Unless one side admitted defeat or became comatose, it wouldn't be decided. But they couldn't just allow Zen to be seen burning in the karma fire hell. How could that even be judged? Move aside, said Yan, her beautiful, bright eyes shone with a cold fire. From her point of view, the competition rules were nothing in comparison to her brother's safety. The rules of the competition are what they are, and I'm afraid I cannot move aside, said the elder shaking his head. Yan stared at the karma fire as it burned more and more ferociously, and a fierce killing intention lit up her cold eyes as her body's life vitality emerged, pouring out endlessly, turning into multiple black spikes. Each spike had a gloomy light flashing and they aimed themselves at the elder. Do you want to fight me? Asked the elder in a deep voice. A huge astrolabe emerged from the elder's body, and the great force of a starry sky appeared. This left the elder at an unexpected stalemate with Yan. Since no one could see what was going on in the burning fire, the dispute outside the field easily drew their attention. Look, down there everyone. It looks like there's about to be a fight. Wait, isn't she the girl in the veil that Zen greeted earlier? She's about the same age as us, and yet, she is brazen enough to confront an elder, and her momentum isn't inferior. Is that his woman? It looks like she's trying to save Zen. Why are all his women so powerful? It's not fair. There was no doubt that every elder at the Cloud sect was monstrous, and 100 years old at least, so they couldn't be weak, but Yan didn't even think about that. Yan and the elder were about to battle, when someone suddenly shouted, "What? Look, everyone, look, I think I just saw Zen." Really, Zen wasn't turned into ashes by the karma fire. Huh, wow, and check it out, his body is shining bright like a golden light. Has this guy cultivated the body of the diamond-like state? Said another onlooker as he stared over at Zen. Yan turned towards the onlooker, and then, following his stare, she looked out and saw her brother. As expected, Zen was bathed in a golden light. Enveloped in the flames of the green lotus karma fire, Zen was unharmed, and tiny golden whirlpools covering his body seemed to be absorbing the flames touching him. The karma fire power was so horrific though, so, how was her brother able to absorb the fires into himself? How could his organs bear the burning of the karma fire? Yan was puzzled that Zen wasn't being injured by the green lotus karma fires, but she was also relieved to see he was okay. She looked at the elder with a seemingly apologetic look. Looking down at the slight frame of the girl, the elder couldn't stay mad, and let it go. He shook his head, believing the girl just cared too much for Zen. Amidst the karma fire hell, Patrick felt as though he'd fallen into an ice house. He couldn't feel the heat of the karma fires, and stared blankly at Zen. This guy isn't even afraid of the karma fire. And now he is actually absorbing the fire. Patrick thought he must be going crazy. Chapter 303, The Way Evan Came on Stage. For several years now, ever since he had started practicing Buddhist cultivation method, Patrick had been proud of his emotional stability, more so than his strength. As someone who had been an Akalanatha in his previous incarnation, he was more stable than anyone else in the world could be. No matter how serious the problem was, he could have dealt with it calmly. As the old saying goes, the Buddha is in one's heart rather than anywhere else. This essentially meant that taking it easy and remaining calm was the way of the Buddhist method. As an expert practitioner, his heart was always like a lake, placid and still. But today was the day of the storm. Today, the lake was not calm as usual. First there were a lot of ripples and then a large wave had come. With increasing temperature, it was now nearing an active volcano. Patrick felt like he was going to puke blood. How on earth was Zen doing that? The green lotus karma fire was the very definition of torture on earth. It was extremely powerful and had no defense. Patrick didn't need to be told just how dangerous it was. He would have felt a lot better if Zen had merely used some secret weapons or some new move to defend himself from the green lotus karma fire temporarily, but the problem was that he wasn't afraid of it at all. It was almost as if the flame was nothing to him. And the worst part was that there were even whirlpools around Zen that pulled the karma fire into themselves. This was unacceptable for anyone in the world. When he was fighting against Rocher, Patrick hadn't really shown his cards. He was keeping them safe because as far as he was concerned, those hidden moves were enough for him to beat Zen. But even though all of those moves were new, every single one of them had been completely blocked. Most importantly, Patrick hadn't planned to use the green lotus karma fire in the first place. He'd never expected that Zen could make him use it. The moment he was forced to the edge of the arena by Zen's sword spirit, Patrick had started thinking of the possibility that maybe Zen had a way to stand against his green lotus karma fire. His initial assessment was that even if Zen could do that, it wouldn't last long. The fire was supposed to last a very long time, and while Zen was busy defending himself from the fire, it would be difficult for him to resist Patrick's other attacks. Patrick was clear about the power of his moves. He knew this one surefire way to make Zen vulnerable. But Zen had chosen a completely different path. He wasn't defending himself from the fire, he was absorbing it. Patrick didn't even have a chance to fight. He was too baffled to do that. All he really wanted to do was ask, where had the fire gone? It would seem that Zen's body had absorbed the fire. But that fire was supposed to be lethal to others. Somehow, it seemed beneficial to Zen. It was something that could refine his body. Actually, Zen had been beaten by Patrick too many times for his fire to have any effect now. The practice had made the warm currents in his body flow through every one of his vessels, which was actually very comfortable. Now the fire was burning inside him and he felt that he was becoming stronger and stronger instead of feeling a sense of burning. The scalding hot flow inside him didn't make him feel ill, but warm and comfortable instead. It could be compared to a blacksmith making weapons. First, he needed to melt it, then beat it, and finally, temper it. Zen had been going through this process since the time his body was refined to the level of a mysterious weapon. The golden whirlpools around him were absorbing the green lotus karma fire faster and faster. The fire didn't spread much far since it was trapped in the arena because of the runes on the floor. This apparent concentration made the situation seem worse. Initially, the karma fire had risen high in the sky and seemed to burn more and more furiously. But as Zen kept absorbing it constantly, it gradually slowed down and became smaller by the second. Now Yan and some sharp-eyed people could finally see the two men fighting in the arena. As time went by, the green lotus karma fire became smaller and smaller. The initially dense blaze now looked like small, red, furious clouds scattered in the arena's air, and they kept on being absorbed by Zen's whirlpools at a very fast speed. Finally the last bit of fire was gone. The whole arena was clear again. Zen's expressions became pleased and happy as a new spiritual texture appeared on his chest due to Patrick's green lotus karma fire. Now he had 3 of them, which meant that his body had been refined to a top-grade spiritual weapon. Another such symbol in his body would probably become a fairy weapon. He wondered what that would be like. After he saw everything that had happened, Patrick shook his head. "Let's stop," he said curtly, deciding to give up the fight. Although there were several moves that he hadn't used yet, but if Zen had blocked the green lotus karma fire, Patrick didn't think it would make any difference or indeed, much sense, if he went on fighting. He actually felt unlucky to have Zen as his rival. Zen had also defeated Rocher earlier on in the competition, but Rocher hadn't lost as badly as Patrick, who was supposed to be better than him. An important reason for this was that Zen had defeated, absorbed, or defended all of Patrick's deadliest moves without flinching. For example, the Golden Bell defense that he had used in the beginning was of no use when faced with Zen's extraordinarily strong power. After that, he had used the move of the diamond-like body, but even that hadn't been able to shake Zen's spiritual weapon-like body at all. And then he had tried the Akalanatha shadow, which was supposed to deliver quite a fight for Zen since he wouldn't have been able to find a way out. But at that moment, out of nowhere, Zen's sword spirit Lily had showed up with the sword dance, using her malicious aura to its utmost. Even the heavenly punishment sword was supposed to be no match for the Akalanatha shadow, but Lily's sword dance had beat it easily anyway. It had actually taken Zen himself by surprise, as he didn't have any idea why and how Lily was so powerful. And then it came to Patrick's best card, Green Lotus Karma Fire. Anyone who saw it would have thrown in the towel immediately. How could a human body stand that furious fire? Patrick never could have expected that his best card would turn out to be the reason he would call it quits. It just happened that Zen was not afraid of any kind of fire. Instead, his body craved fire to refine itself and make itself stronger. The karma fire was hell to others, but to Zen, it was like Alice's Wonderland. He couldn't like it more. To Patrick's chagrin, he absorbed every bit of it like an alcoholic enjoying a glass of beer. If it wasn't for that, Patrick wouldn't have lost. "Patrick, there's no need to feel frustrated. It's not that I am stronger than you. It just happens that some of your best moves weren't as effective as usual, but that doesn't mean they are not powerful enough." Of course Zen could understand how upset Patrick was. Anyone in his shoes would feel the same. As a warrior, he didn't want his opponent to feel upset. But to his surprise, Patrick suddenly closed his eyes and took a deep breath with his palms pressed together in front of him. When he opened his eyes again, his face had suddenly become much calmer. Life is like a river and the Buddhist path is like a raft. Make the best use of the raft and it will take you to the shore. How can I reach the shore if I get upset just because of one failure? Thank you, Zen. Karma lies in one's destiny. It was a eureka moment for Patrick after experiencing all the coincidences and witnessing the unusuals these days. He was wise and clever because he had been an Akalanatha in his previous incarnation, and this meant he could get to understand more of the Buddhist Dharma through many trivial things in life. Now his heart was like a calm and still lake again. He turned around and told the referee, "I give up." The referee nodded at him, pleased with Patrick's calm intake of defeat, then announced the results of the All Peaks competition. Zen from Drizzle Peak won and disciple Patrick lost. After the announcement, one of the elders came onto the stage and announced the Cloud Sect ranking. The audience erupted in a buzz of conversation as the results were announced. After the fight going his way just now, it was Zen who now ranked first among all the disciples. While everyone was busy talking about the results, suddenly there was a flash of white light in the south. It was coming straight towards the stage at a furious pace from far away like a shooting star moving across the night sky. As everyone stared at it, it got closer and closer. Both Zen and Patrick stared at it too. When it was only a few miles away, they realized the flash of white light was actually a man flying with the force of his life vitality. The problem was that now he was only a couple of 100 feet from the stage, but he showed no sign of slowing down. It looked like he was going to crash onto the stage head first. 500 feet, 300 feet, 100 feet from the stage. Hey, watch out, Zen wanted to warn him, but it was too late. Crash, there was a loud noise. The man in the white light crashed headfirst right into the stage. But he didn't stop, the inertia made him roll over and over again on the stage floor like a ball. Finally he stopped and rose to his feet. Since he had landed headfirst, his neck looked very weird, tilted to one side in a strange way, like it had been broken. But the man held his head with both of his hands and twisted it with a sharp crack. It sprang into position again and now, he looked relaxed and comfortable. The young man, in his 20s, looked handsome in some ways but not all. There was something strange about his features. His eyes, nose, and mouth somehow didn't look right together, and sometimes they even seemed funny. The way he had showed up in front of everyone was embarrassing, even shameful. But no one was going to laugh at him or doubt his strength. Anyone else who had hit the floor head first would have died immediately of blunt force trauma, but this young man had survived unscathed, which was clear proof that he was no ordinary person. Patrick let out a sigh. The man had a habit of always showing up in such unusual ways, causing absolute chaos. But still, he greeted him politely, "Nice to see you, Evan." So that was it. The young man was actually Evan Lee, the real top disciple of the Cloud Sect ranking and supposedly the most powerful disciple in the entire Cloud Sect. Chapter 304, My Queen. The way in which Evan had showed up abruptly was so peculiar and at the same, laughably stupid, that the over 100,000 audiences on site were dumbfounded. Since he could fly in the sky, it was reasonable to believe that his strength was at least above the level of Illuminating Soul Realm. And being able to step into the level of Illuminating Soul Realm was adequate to show that his talents were by no means weak or limited. If so, the audience was bewildered as to why he acted like an idiot just now. Who is this idiot on earth? Finally, one of the disciples couldn't help it and burst out due to strong confusion. Hush, keep it down. Don't call him names. Didn't you see Patrick was respectful to him just now? If my guess is right, he is the famous Evan Lee. He is more powerful than Patrick. Another disciple scolded in a low voice. Isn't he supposed to be practicing martial arts in his secret chamber these days? What's he doing here? Has he finished practicing and come out already? Hang on, that might also mean that the All Peaks competition's not finished yet. The former disciple asked, now looking pretty excited. After the disciples had witnessed that Zen had defeated Patrick, or rather, Patrick had admitted defeat, they had begun waiting for one of the elders to announce the rankings and changes of the entire Cloud Sect list. Not in their farthest dreams had they expected the famous Evan would show up abruptly at the end of the competition. Now they became thrilled and began to look forward to the stunning competition which might take place between Zen and Evan if they agreed. After all, 100,000 disciples of Cloud Sect had each spent a point, which equaled to 2 cubic crystals as well as the whole asset of an ordinary family in an ordinary county to come and watch the competition on site. They wouldn't have wanted it to end just like that. Yet, seeing Evan's behavior which was much like a dumb person, the members of the audience were worried whether the competition would ever start or not. Hey, Patrick, look at you so gloomy. You look like a dead fish. Did you just lose? Evan asked with a stupid smile on his face. He always behaved like an arrogant sod and would have said anything he wanted to, completely ignorant of others' feelings. Patrick was used to that. He simply nodded and replied, my strength is not as good as that of Zen. So, my failure is just how it has to be. Although he talked to Evan in a seemingly respectful way, he really did not want to say too many words to him anymore. Whenever and wherever Evan showed up, he sure also brought endless trouble with his stupid personality. It was infuriating. Evan, though looking like an idiot, was not easy to be fooled around and obviously wouldn't stop asking until he got a satisfying answer. He then went up and put his arm on Patrick's shoulder and asked, beaming, what do you mean by, just how it has to be? I am sure that you are upset and don't want to accept it as the final result, right? I detect that the strength of your opponent over there is only at the second grade of nature level. Losing to him? Oh, Patrick, you humiliate me. You should be embarrassed too. Would you like me to win your honor back? I am telling you, I can beat the trash out of him just like that. No, thank you, Evan. I attend the All Peaks competition just for learning from other competitors, not to incur hatred, Patrick replied quickly with a heavy face. Yes, he was right, he didn't know how to deal with Evan's unruly and teasing manner. I think it's still necessary for me to win your honor back. Let's just say that's the way it has to be, shall we? As for the reward, I will not ask for too much. How about printing several books about the basic Buddhist cultivation methods you have figured out and giving them to me as a reward, deal? Evan burst out in laughter on hearing his own words. What the heck? Patrick roared silently deep inside. Yet, he just refused calmly, no, thank you. Evan, I still have some other business to handle right now. Just as Evan and Patrick were having the conversation, the elder who was in charge of announcing the rankings asked him, Evan, did you make another breakthrough during the practice in your secret chamber? Yes, and I made 3 breakthroughs in a row, jumping from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade of Illuminating Soul Realm straight. Evan replied, stretching and yawning. It was almost as if improving his level was as simple and natural as eating and sleeping. He was an arrogant yet powerful personality indeed. There were some ancient treasures, such as super well-refined pills, which could help warriors in making quick breakthroughs in the Illuminating Soul Realm. However, this kind of well-refined pills was very rare in the Eastern region. Most of the pills refined by Eastern region alchemists were aimed for nature creatures. Besides, Evan had a solid foundation, and obviously, he didn't need to rely on well-refined pills. He relied entirely on his own ability to make 3 breakthroughs in a row, which substantially showed that his talent was really appalling. Well, good to hear that. However, since you have reached the 6th grade of Illuminating Soul Realm, I am sorry to tell you that you will be removed from the Cloud Sect list according to established conventions. Now, I will announce the final rankings of the All Peaks competition, the elder said in a happy tone. According to the established conventions of Cloud Sect, the strength level required for the All Peaks competition and Cloud Sect list was capped, and the strongest participants were not allowed to be beyond the 3rd grade of Illuminating Soul Realm. Anyone who was able to train beyond this level would be automatically removed from the list and disqualified to attend any of the related competitions. With his earlier strength level, he did have the qualification to participate in the All Peaks competition. But that was a little while ago. When he had walked out from his secret chamber, his strength had leapt directly from the 3rd grade of Illuminating Soul Realm to the 6th grade. This was not only beyond the capped requirement, but also very slightly weaker than the topmost grade of Illuminating Soul Realm. That was to say, it wasn't going to be a long time before his realm became comparable to the saints, or even the elders with relatively weaker strength. What was more, it was well known that Evan had a solid foundation. This was unlike many saints and elders in the Cloud Sect who were unable to make breakthroughs after a particular level, and therefore had to achieve their current strength only with the aid of well-refined pills. In terms of real strength, he might not be too far from them. Under the above situation, it was obviously not fair to allow Evan to attend the All Peaks competition. No, Elder J, no matter if I am alive or dead, I will always be Cloud Sect's disciple. Why do you want to remove me from the list? Please, I really want to attend this year's All Peaks competition and I really have to. Although I have made breakthroughs, my name is still on this year's list of All Peaks competition participants, right? Evan argued strongly, trying to convince Elder J and the others. Elder J also hesitated at the moment. Evan's case was really special. He was indeed registered on the list of eligible disciples to participate in this year's competition, but he had been practicing in his secret chamber and had showed up only at the end of the competition. Just allow him to fight. There's nothing special about it. Isn't it just one more match? One disciple bellowed. We want to see it. Evan is also Cloud Sect's disciple. Why can't he attend the All Peaks competition? One more disciple bellowed, rather unwilling to lose such a good opportunity to watch another wonderful match. Yeah, seconded. Why can't he be allowed? It doesn't make any difference to have one more match. Another disciple added loudly. At this crucial moment, several disciples began to kick up a fuss about it. From their points of view, if they could watch one more match, especially the one between Evan Lee and Zhen Luo, it would have been a great bonus for them. After all, they had each spent a point on the All Peaks competition, and although Evan really looked like an idiot, it could not be denied that he was really powerful. Immediately, 100,000 disciples of Cloud Sect got thrilled and began to chant, spontaneously and repeatedly, one more fight. Looking down at the enthusiastic audiences, Elder Jay gradually wavered, but there were still some thoughts in his mind that held him back. Of course, Zhen had already created so many miracles. But since he and Evan were not at all at the same level of strength, Zhen had no chance of winning this competition, which meant it would not be a fair competition. In fact, he had half a belief that Evan was trying to bully Zhen. While seeing so many people were supporting him, Evan stared at Zhen arrogantly, as if he were looking at a little weak sheep. He impatiently said again, Elder Jay, look at that. Everyone is waiting for this fight. I think you should make the decision as soon as possible. Just then, things took a dramatic turn. Yan, who had been standing outside the battle ring, suddenly walked inside and yelled furiously, Evan Lee. When Evan heard his name called out, his eyebrows narrowed. He had heard this voice before. Suddenly, he remembered exactly who would make such a voice and his face changed abruptly. A bitter expression appeared on his face. He asked in a trembling voice, You dare call me directly by my name and defile it with your vile tongue. Yan cut in immediately, walking 2 steps closer to him and staring at him with her clear and beautiful eyes. Well, Evan tried to reply with an awkward look on his face. He shook his head immediately after thinking about it for a second. No, I don't dare to do that. Yan was wearing a veil, but the others could see that she had raised her eyebrows. Meanwhile, she asked proudly with a smile in her eyes, Then what is it that you call me? Evan replied hesitantly, even more embarrassed. In front of so many people, I would rather not say it out since it looked like Yan had caught on to his Achilles heel. He no longer seemed confident and proud. Really, did you forget your vows? Yan reminded him coldly. Evan was now full of deep regrets inside. He thought to himself bitterly, earlier, as soon as I walked out of my secret chamber, I was surprised to hear that a super genius from Cloud Sect has emerged at the All Peaks competition. I decided to rush to the site and check him out. I wanted to see who this genius was and to have a go at him. When I arrived here, Patrick has already been defeated. This seemingly genius disciple whose strength is only at the 2nd grade of the nature level has managed to defeat Patrick. I was really interested in fighting with him. It would have been so great. Never have I ever expected to meet Yan in person here. Isn't she supposed to be locked up in Hell Mountain right now? If I had known she was here, I wouldn't have come here today. Honestly, I am really not interested in All Peaks competition's reward, and even if I defeated Zhen with my current strength, I guess the head of Cloud Sect wouldn't give me any reward. At the same time, when hearing Yan mention his vows, Evan suddenly became dejected, like an eggplant that had experienced cold frost, and finally dropped his head, saying reluctantly in a low voice, My queen. Well, that's my good boy. Yan remarked, laughing out with great satisfaction. Seeing such a scene, Zhen found him speechless. What had just happened, and how had it happened? When did his sister become a queen? Why would he call Yan his queen? And as soon as Yan had asked him to call her that, Evan had obeyed. How come he, with his level of strength, was so obedient to Yan's orders? The disciples who were watching the scene were also completely stunned on hearing it. Did Evan just call the veiled woman his queen? He was acting like an idiot, but he was probably the strongest disciple of the Cloud Sect right now. How come he called the woman his queen? She was probably below him in strength. Who was this masked woman on Earth? Wasn't she said to be Zhen's girl? Soon, all sorts of guesses about the woman's identity spread over among the audience. Some said she was Kenneth's daughter, while some said she was Yan. Anyway, almost all sorts of speculations were thrown about. Do you have to fight with Zen? Yan asked one more question. Evan was at a loss since he didn't know how to answer her question. Earlier, he was eager to fight with Zen and beat him up, but now, Yan had showed up unexpectedly and had made him call her queen in public. He was really not in the mood anymore. When she could not hear any reply from him, Yan proposed slowly, if you really want to defeat Zen and prove your strength, it is still feasible. Now that you are at the 6th grade of Illuminating Soul Realm, the competition between you and Zen will be quite unfair. Even if you win, you will still be accused of bullying him, and you will not have much fun. Why don't you just compete against him in swordplay? I mean, both of you don't use your life vitality, making it a pure swordplay competition. When hearing Yan's proposal, Elder Ge's eyes lit up and widened in joy. Immediately, he seconded the idea briskly. That's an excellent proposal. Evan, you are also good at swordplay. It would be fair for you two to compete with each other in pure swordplay. In fact, Elder Ge had witnessed Zen's basic swordplay. As someone whose strength was not top among the elders, he still had a decent ranking and knew a thing or two. Thus, it was easy for him to know that Zen's swordplay was really formidable. Therefore, he supported Yan's proposal. Apparently, he was also trying to set up a trap for Evan. Patrick, standing next to Elder Ge, also had a secret smile inside. He had competed against Zen, so he obviously knew what was going on. This time, I believe that Evan definitely will fall into a well-set trap as he has never had the chance to figure out the real strength of Zen's swordplay before. It's true that Evan can beat Zen if they use their real strength to compete. However, in terms of pure swordplay, ha 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 Evan, you are staring complete failure in the face, he thought happily and stealthily. Compete in pure swordplay, Evan replied carelessly, rubbing his nose. I, Evan, have never been afraid of anyone in pure swordplay. All right, this final match will be a competition of our swordsmanship skills only. Previously, as Yan had seen Zen condense his sword spirit, she speculated that Zen's attainments in swordsmanship were certainly not low, but she had not seen the formidable powers that lay behind that talent. The reason she had put forward such a proposal was that she simply didn't want to see Evan defeat Zen with a dominating advantage and strength in the competition. What she didn't know was that she had inadvertently set up a trap for Evan, just as what she had done years ago to defeat and tease him. Chapter 305, My Master. Evan Lee dreaded meeting Yan like a rat feared a cat. At that time, Yan was the top disciple at the Lady Peak. She had excellent talent and was exceptionally strong. Yan was comparable to the personal disciples in terms of strength. The difference between Yan and Zen was how they had become famous. Zen became a powerful and well-known disciple all of a sudden. Before that, his extraordinary talent and strength had been known only by a few people, including Roger Meng, Zachary Zhao, and the disciples of the Drizzle Peak. While Yan had gained popularity differently. She had been granted special admission to Cloud Sect on account of her talent. She had been taken good care of since she became a disciple of Cloud Sect. Most people at Cloud Sect watched her and protected her. As a matter of fact, she had faced almost no obstacles during her time at Cloud Sect. The only trouble Yan suffered was that she had to handle numerous pursuers. Yan was as pretty as a fairy. She was nice to everybody around her, and so everyone liked her. Since she had tremendous talent, Cloud Sect regarded her as one of the most important disciples. A girl as perfect as Yan, of course, was attractive to the young disciples of Cloud Sect. Disciples without outstanding strength, talent, or powerful background did not dare to express their feelings to her, as Yan was too excellent. So only the elite disciples from the top 7 noble clans dared to convey their interest in Yan. Fancy Yun clan's young master had been Yan's most ardent admirer. In the end, Fancy Yun paid a painful price. Yan cut off his penis. And that was why Cloud Sect claimed to have imprisoned Yan at Hell Mountain. Evan, one of the most outstanding personal disciples, also admired Yan at that time. But Evan always behaved kind of doughtily, and some disciples egged him on to curse Yan and to tease her at the same. At that time, Evan was at the top of the Cloud Sect disciple list. That meant he was the strongest disciple among all disciples at Cloud Sect. Yan had found it challenging to cope with Evan. But Yan was smart and found a way to lure Evan to bet with her. Evan was very strong, and his talent was far beyond that of other disciples. Even in such a huge sect, his skills and talents would ensure his promotion to principal disciple. Since he had won the final fight of the last all-peak competition, he had the chance to pass Cloud Road and enter Cloud Hall. It was said that Evan did go to Cloud Road, but during the examination, he felt tired and actually fell asleep. Being selected for Cloud Road was a dream that all disciples of Cloud Sect shared, regardless of whether they could pass it or not. But to everyone's surprise, Evan had fallen asleep there. Kenneth She was enraged due to Evan's behavior. He had thought that Evan would pass Cloud Road and become a principal disciple of Cloud Hall. But reality had been too far from his expectation. After Evan returned, Kenneth imprisoned him at Hell Mountain for a whole year. After that, everybody could see that Evan was a fool. Yan also understood that and made a bet with him. Of course, Evan lost. Yan was not as strong as Evan, but she was much smarter than Evan. She used her intelligence to trick him. Evan didn't learn his lesson and bet more than once with Yan. Evan lost a significant number of points during their first bet. After gambling against Yan the second time, he lost his sword. The third time, Evan had nothing worthy left to give, so they made a deal that every time Evan met her, he had to call her, "my queen." Although Evan was not clever, he understood that it was humiliating to call a little girl, "my queen," especially as he had been the strongest disciple at Cloud Sect and the girl was much younger than he was. From then on, Evan didn't dare to meet Yan anymore. He tried his best to avoid her. If he really had to confront her, he forced himself to call her, "my queen." 3 years ago, he won the all-peak competition easily. And he had improved dramatically during these 3 years. Had he fought against Zen, it would have been unfair, and everyone would feel as though he was bullying the weak. Since Elder Jay had agreed with the suggestion, Zen didn't say anything else. He was willing to fight, of course. Although they could not use their life vitality, Evan was confident in his sword skills. "Since we will only fight with sword skills, you cannot complain that I bully you, and you must admit defeat if you lose. Are you agreeable?" Evan asked while staring at Zen. Zen nodded. "I understand that sword skills have nothing to do with a person's strength. It depends on how much we learned. Of course, I won't say that you bully me." "Good," Evan replied. With a quick nod, Evan smiled and removed a sword from his space ring. The sword looked ordinary and of a low quality. Despite its appearance, the sword was a top-grade mysterious weapon. Being the strongest disciple of Cloud Sect, it was expected that Evan would use a fairy weapon or even a middle-grade one. No one thought that Evan would use a mysterious weapon. It was common for outer disciples to use a top-grade mysterious weapon. Evan knew that the sword's quality was too low for him, but he only laughed in embarrassment. He had owned a fairy weapon, but he had lost the bet and had to surrender it to Yan. And Yan never thought about returning the sword. So, Evan only had a mysterious weapon. Ting! A metallic sound was heard when Zen took out his sword. He was serious now as he knew that Evan was stronger than Patrick. Although he looked a bit crazy, Zen had a hard time identifying Evan's weakness. Zen estimated that Evan was thrice as strong as Patrick. The thought that perhaps he wouldn't be able to defeat Evan dawned on Zen. Zen knew that he had to try, even if they were only using sword skills. After all, as Zen said before, sword skills had nothing to do with life vitality. But, Zen knew that he had to take Evan seriously. "Good, you have great potential." But, Evan stopped mid-speech and gazed at Zen curiously. "Are you going to fight me with basic sword skills?" he asked. Zen nodded and replied, "Yes, I am. You are insulting me. I refuse to fight." Evan shook his head and said, "If you don't want to battle, you can tell me. Why do you want to use basic sword skills to fight against me? Am I not strong enough for you? If you refuse to fight, you can admit defeat," Zen answered calmly. "Admit defeat? That is ridiculous. You are asking me to admit defeat because you intend to use basic sword skills. Let's do it this way, I'll fight against you without a sword. If you can force me to use my sword during our match, I will call you, my master." After he finished his sentence, Evan returned his sword to his space ring. Evan laughed coldly. An indignant look replaced the curious expression he had before. Apparently, he was convinced that Zen was humiliating him by only using basic sword skills. After hearing Evan's declaration, all the disciples, including Yan, and the masters looked at Evan as if he was a fool. They shook their heads and thought, Evan is really a fool. Evan had cultivated in isolation for a long while. He hadn't had the chance to watch the process of the all-peak competition. But most disciples had viewed it from the arena or through the picture slab. Zen had impressed everyone except Evan with his mysterious and powerful basic sword skills. Although Evan's position was high on the disciple list, none of the disciples thought Zen would lose if they only fought with sword skills. On the contrary, they believed that even with Evan's skills, a draw would be the best result he could achieve. And now he wanted to battle Zen without a sword. He hadn't considered that Zen could force him to use his sword. If Zen did he actually consider calling Zen, my master? He was really naive. Previously, Evan had to suffer the humiliation of calling Yan, my queen. If Zen were to defeat him, wouldn't Evan look twice as foolish? Since Evan insisted on acting like an idiot all the time, no one reminded him of his past mistake. That meant that Evan had made a trap for himself and that he would step in it without any hesitation. Okay, since you insist, let's begin, Zen replied. Zen didn't want to say anything else to Evan. As soon as he finished speaking, Zen attacked. Zen's first move was the most common one, stabbing levelly with all his strength focused on the tip of the sword. This sword skill was called horizontal stab. Evan had been indifferent at first. He was so confident that he believed he could avoid the attack with his eyes closed. Just as Evan took his first step, his face paled. Gosh, this is... At this moment, Evan's expression changed. Chapter 306, The Laughingstock. Like Evan, the remaining 100,000 Cloud Sect disciples were shocked by what they saw. Everyone knew Zen was exceptional at the basic swordsmanship. However, Evan had foolishly boasted in front of all disciples that he wouldn't need to unsheath his sword in his fight against Zen. He must have been out of his mind. But, the sad fact was, most of the disciples had the same mindset as Evan. Earlier, when some of the disciples had seen Zen's fundamental swordsmanship, they were impressed, and spoke highly of his basic swordsmanship. When that was passed along, it became deeply rooted in the minds of the rest disciples, which made them feel Evan's bragging and looking down on Zen ridiculous. Thus, they had been waiting, on edge, to watch Evan fail, and would be equally thrilled if Evan yielded to Zen. At that moment, all those 100,000 disciples shared a single thought: you always boast about yourselves, just because you are a personal disciple. Do you think you're invincible? Now, let's see how you handle Zen and his swordsmanship. Wait and see, you will submit to Zen, and admit that he is your master. Evan was feeling embarrassed that he had talked big and regretted it thoroughly since he wasn't able to walk the walk. How on earth was Zen's basic swordsmanship so seemingly exceptional? There was no other swordsmanship that was more ordinary than what Zen had adopted. It was only horizontal stab, and that, to be honest, was the most straightforward, yet simplest move used in basic swordsmanship. An opponent using this style of swordsmanship could be easily outmaneuvered by shooting the sword out. Horizontal stabbing was the first move that most swordsmen studied first. To lay a solid foundation for future swordsmanship skills, a juvenile usually practiced horizontal stabbing at least 1,000 to 10,000 times. It was just the horizontal stabbing move, so why was Evan finding it impossible to dodge in any direction from the assault? It appeared to be just the basic swordsmanship. How was it possible for Zen's moves to be this awesome? Evan felt like he was going crazy. Naturally, he didn't know Zen had done brilliantly in the All Peaks competition purely using the basic swordsmanship. Zen only adopted simple swordsmanship, yet, it was challenging for Evan to dodge. 100,000 disciples watching thought it was natural for Evan to be in a difficult situation. It seemed it was only Evan who wasn't aware of Zen's extraordinary performance so far at the All Peaks competition utilizing just his basic swordsmanship. After all, Evan had outperformed everyone using his strength since 3 years ago and was the most talented disciple in Cloud Sect. Since then, his strength had enhanced greatly. Noticing the razor-sharp blade slashing the air as it headed towards him, Evan unconsciously reached for his sword. Recalling his promise, he stopped himself, and instead turned abruptly, contorting his body and barely escaping Zen's attack. Just now, Evan had managed to avoid Zen's first sword attack, but it put him in an extremely awkward position. Then came Zen's second strike. A third sword attack followed. Then, the fourth sword attack. Evan's head cleared, and he realized he wouldn't be able to keep on dodging Zen's sword attacks even if he used all the body techniques he knew. However, he still had difficulty because he had boasted that he wouldn't draw his sword in the fight with Zen. At least that was how Evan felt. If he unsheathed his sword to confront Zen now, he would have to acknowledge Zen's superiority and refer to him as his master. With this in mind, Evan determined stubbornly that he had no choice but to continue resisting Zen's attacks without his sword. Without hesitation, Zen thrust his sword forward a second time, using horizontal sweep. For the horizontal sweep move, one should keep the blade horizontal while swinging it quickly. The force was exerted upon the front of the sword's edge near the little finger. As the sword drew closer, Evan gritted his teeth again and abruptly moved to avoid it. The tip of Zen's streamer sword nearly sliced Evan's back. If his blade had been raised just a little higher, Evan would have been injured. The third sword attack was called sword pointing. When using sword pointing, one should keep his wrist relaxed and then quickly flick it with great force in order that the sword tip could abruptly strike the opponent in a downward motion which caused the force to travel to the tip. Zen used these three basic swordsmanship techniques in combination. Since Evan found Zen's first and second offenses so severe, he would run out of steam with this third swordsmanship assault against him, and soon enough, he would be struck by Zen's sword if he stuck to not drawing his blade. Evan would be defeated if he was struck by Zen's sword whether or not he was injured. After his position was worsened, Evan gritted his teeth and unsheathed his sword in spite of his promise. Ingeniously taking advantage of the situation, he swept Zen's sharp sword away. Now, there were at least 100,000 disciples paying close attention to the battle between Zen and Evan. All of them had opinions on how many attacks Evan could withstand before he pulled his sword out. Some of them thought Evan could resist 5 sword attacks, while others considered 6 sword assaults would be Evan's limit. There were a few disciples who had been watching Evan's dodging capabilities and thought he would hold out till the 10th strike though. They had all guessed wrong. Evan had no choice but to unsheath his sword when Zen took the offensive for the third time. The sword is drawn. Did Evan unsheath his blade already? Will he address Zen as his master? Or, will he break this promise? Well, he really has no choice but to keep his word on this. He made his promise in front of so many people. Quote, unsheathing his sword, Evan was filled with regret and a grudge swelled from deep inside him. All the blame was his though, and his boastful words. He shouldn't have been rash, and should never have made that promise without just cause. Even though he regretted it, there was nothing he could do at that moment. What was said was like water spilled, and could not be taken back. Besides, Evan had made the promise publicly with 100,000 Cloud sect disciples present. If he acknowledged Zen as his master, he would be thoroughly disgraced, but on the other hand, if he refused, Evan would be untrusted among his peers. Away from Evan, a slight knowing grin could be seen on Zen's face as he held fast to his sword without saying a word. Even now, Evan hesitated because he wasn't sure what to do next. Evan felt as though he was going stark raving crazy. Say it, call him master, come on, call him master. Call him master, yelled merciless disciples, with others joining in after the first troublemaker shouted. Suddenly, there were hundreds and thousands chanting the taunt together. Elder Jay stood there dumbfounded. He couldn't believe Evan was that unpopular with his fellow disciples that they would have him humiliate himself publicly like this. Why were the disciples of the Cloud sect against him? The fact was though, that it couldn't be said all the disciples showed hatred toward Evan, just like it couldn't be concluded that Zen was favored by them. If Evan hadn't arrogantly boasted, they wouldn't have treated him so rudely. But, from the very start of the fight, Evan had taken for granted that he was superior, and everyone was very glad to witness the failures of people like that. The greater the fall, the happier the bystanders were. 100,000 people shouted in unison, making the very grounds shake. As the chanting grew louder and louder, it seemed the scene would stay with Evan the rest of his life. At long last, Evan ground out through clenched teeth, fine. I will refer to him as my master. Evan thought he would be able to seize the chance and call Zen, master, quietly, while all other disciples were loudly chanting. However, all of them fell silent all of a sudden as if they were of one mind. It became so deathly quiet that one could even hear a pin drop. Additionally, all eyes were on Evan, with their ears wide open. Are you teasing me? Asked Evan, feeling like he would burst into tears any moment. Evan was feeling reckless and a little mad, but he wasn't a fool. How could he have cultivated himself and reached the level he was if he had been? Evan realized it was impossible to make excuses to not to keep his promise. At last, he gave up and with shagging shoulders, he yelled, my master. Ha, not far off, Yan couldn't stifle the laughter when she heard Evan calling Zen his master. As she laughed, her chest and waist bounced, trembling like a paper flower. Many times, Evan had lost bets, and yielded to Yan, calling her, queen. Now, as promised, he was calling Zen, master. But, it was Evan's own fault. So, Evan didn't deserve pity from anyone. The silence broken by Yan became an uproar as most of the disciples burst out laughing too. Their uproarious laughter echoed throughout the field, ringing in Evan's ears. How sensational the laughingstock was. Evan blushed as blood rushed to his cheeks. He was more furious when he saw Zen smiling and knowingly nodding at him. I'm your senior in Cloud Sect. I just called you, my master, and are you so shameless that you responded by nodding in agreement? Well, I will make you regret that. After the roaring laughter gradually died down, Evan added, yes, I underestimated you earlier. Now, I'd like to fight with you again, but, this time with swords. The loser will acknowledge the winner as his superior, and address him as, Master, whenever we meet in the future. Zen, do you accept my challenge? Zen was stunned. He listened to what Evan said and stood there dumbfounded while firmly glaring at Evan. All 100,000 disciples stared at Evan in shock with their mouths agape. Evan was behaving like a fool, even now. Zen had agreed to decide the winner of the All Peaks competition based on swordsmanship. Now, Evan was making another outrageous request. Evan realized his request was a little rude. He felt he couldn't do more than grit his teeth and add, well, I can't force you to, but, let's formally fight against each other using swordsmanship techniques. As soon as Evan finished speaking his mind, his long sword trembled, and he pointed the tip at Zen. Suddenly, Evan's face turned hard. Even though it was only a mysterious weapon, Evan looked extraordinary, as if the weapon he held were a fairy or sacred weapon. Zen felt as if Evan was like the Iceni on Killing Sword Mountain. Since Evan was a senior disciple at Cloud Sect, he could not be a simpleton. Chapter 307, Broken Sword. Despite the occasional madness, Evan still was the strongest opponent Zen had ever encountered. Chances were Zen would have long been defeated if refinement techniques or life vitality was allowed in this battle. After all, there was a gap in inner energy between the two fighters. Undoubtedly, Zen's foundation was solid, and this made him stronger than other warriors in the same stage. But Evan was solid in foundation, too. He didn't raise his energy abruptly through pills, but accumulated strength through regular exercise and practice. However, Zen wasn't frustrated that Evan was stronger than him. He knew that if he worked hard enough, he would also reach the 6th stage of the illuminating soul realm. And in time, he would reap greater achievements than what Evan had accomplished. But improving his level was not the primary goal. Right now, his focus should be on the sword fight. The swordsmanship you are employing is very unusual. The basic swordsmanship is already the simplest form when using a sword, but yours seems to be even simpler than the basic. I don't know how you manage that, but I know there's always a way to crack it. That said, Evan straightened himself and poised for another attack. As he held himself and charged for the strike, his mental aura was so strong no one dared to look him in the eye. At that moment, Evan was a completely different person, nothing like the aimless, silly, dignified, and proud fighter he was known to be. And the change was so abrupt that it caught the audience by surprise. Not many were capable of understanding what was happening. I will conquer your simplest swordsmanship technique with a most complicated one, he declared, and as he started to attack, the sword in his hand began to shake violently. Suddenly, it tinkled, and as it continued to make noise, the sword vibrated harder, leaving numerous images of a sword around it. Like thousands of peonies blooming simultaneously, under Evan's careful control, the shadows of swords took shape. They formed thousands of flowers made of swords, which were as beautiful as they were deadly. Falling Flowers Sword. Evan's hands were steady and his eyes fierce. And as a storm of swords swept through the field, he roared. Like the spectators, Zen was in awe. What an expert swordsman, and that sword is beautiful and lethal. The young disciple held his breath as he continued to be dazzled by the overlapping and extremely complicated sword flowers overhead. He now understood what Evan meant by cracking the simple swordsmanship with a complicated one. The method indeed proved to be very effective. In fighting a swordsman, one had to discover the flaws in his swordsmanship. However, this Falling Flowers sword was not only gorgeous in its effect, but likewise deadly in its complication. It was not that there was no flaw in a complicated swordsmanship, but the complexity of the Falling Flowers sword helped to cloak its imperfections. It would take Zen some time to learn of the flaws in Evan's swordsmanship. But Zen didn't have the luxury of time. When two swordsmen were in combat, the one who slowed down would lose the fight. Zen had to bite the bullet and keep up with his skillful opponent. Sighing inwardly, Zen lowered the tip of his sword and kept the weapon close to his left side, allowing its strength to reach the front of the blade. Then he extended his left middle and index fingers until they straightened and pressed on his right wrist. Circle parry, he announced. He focused all his energy on this move. The circle parry was one of the basic swordplay skills employed for defense. Since he was fighting a very tough opponent, Zen had only to assume a defensive pose then step back. Chink. The sound of metal against metal went on non-stop as the swords clashed. In what seemed like a second, Evan's sword hit Zen's weapon countless times, forcing the young disciple to stumble back. It took Zen 7 or 8 full steps to regain his footing. And he didn't have enough time to recover his breath before Evan advanced again, sword in hand, fury in his eyes. You think simplest is the strongest? Bah, I say your sword is not strong, but soft. So, how are you going to defeat me with that? Show me. Defeat me with your pliant sword. You're merely a novice at the second stage of nature level. And a beginner like you won't be able to see through my swordsmanship. When I take a stab at you, my sword will strike you 12 times. That number is square with a second stab, so the sword strikes 144 times. And my third stab, it's 1,728 strikes of a sword. I dare you to fight back against this downpour of attacks. Sneering at his retreating opponent, Evan tried to make Zen feel threatened. Hundreds of thousands of flowers blossomed around his swords, emerging endlessly, as fast as his eyes could follow as he thrust his sword at dazzling speed. Watching from a short distance, Yan's brows wrinkled. She was aware that not enough cultivation was Zen's serious disadvantage. If my brother had practiced sword skills for as long as Evan did, he would have won the fight. After all, his simple swordsmanship is certainly more practical than the falling flower's sword, and performs better in combat, Yan thought. But the most skilled fighter wasn't always the strongest. A fighter's overall strength should include every aspect, mental, physical, and spiritual, working as a whole. After all, Zen had defeated Patrick in their previous encounter. And that was due to Zen's brilliance in martial arts, his prudent use of his unique skills pulled out of his sleeve. If Zen had stepped into the consummation stage of nature level, he wouldn't have to rely on his present skills to defeat others. At that stage, when a fighter's energy storage was full, any surplus energy could be used to nurture his or her soul. And the fighter would acquire the power to communicate with the universe. And if he could enter the illuminating soul realm, more significant changes would happen to him. His strengths, reactions, eyesight, and sense of timing and coordination would be further enhanced. Lost in thought, Yan quickly shook her head to return to the situation at hand. Her brother's eyesight was keen. If he entered the illuminating soul realm, the falling flower's sword would be nothing to him. He would easily notice the flaws the moment Evan executed his first move. But her brother needed to grow further, so for now, Evan remained too powerful an adversary for him. Clang! The new attack had Zen taking several more steps back. At the moment, he was not far from the edge of the combat field. If backed into a corner and left with no room for retreat, he would no doubt lose the fight. Gaining advantage again, Evan burst into laughter. With a big smile, he yelled at Zen, "You seem to be out of tricks. You and your sword are beaten." That said, he sneered. The senior disciple's sword clinked again and 1,000 flowers formed to launch countless attacks. He had much faith in his skills and didn't think Zen could see through his rapid moves. The only outcome he saw for Zen was defeat. Also watching from not far away was Elder Jay, who shook his head at what he saw. Zen was a good disciple and a skillful fighter, but he was no match for Evan, yet. Even though they were competing in swordsmanship, Evan's energy storage gave him the advantage. The combat wasn't fair for Zen. Up until that point, Zen had blocked 2 of Evan's attacks. But he had reached his limit and was close to the extreme. All he could manage now was the defensive posture, circle parry, but had no other means to attack. In a sword fight, defense was often the worst. Many textbooks said that, the best defense is offense. Thus many swordplay schools had even abandoned teaching defensive skills and instead focused on offensive skills. As long as opponents were pinned down during a fierce attack, victory for the one with the upper hand was inevitable. That was Evan's current strategy. He intended to disrupt Zen with his quick attacks, then defeat him at the third attack. But just as everyone thought Zen would lose the fight, all of a sudden, something happened. Clink, clee, clunk. As Evan's attacks were deflected, the tinkling sound continued to ring, when all of a sudden, a loud clunk permeated the air causing the entire combat field to vibrate. It was Evan's sword, and it had cracked during collision, its front half gone. What? Evan held the broken sword and stood frozen in a posture for attack. His eyes nearly popped out of shock. Everyone stared at him in silence, Zen included. No one expected to see this happen. What kind of fighter broke his weapon in the middle of a fight? Was that not being irresponsible and unprofessional? From where she stood, Yan giggled and gloated. Only she knew the reason why the sword snapped. Commonly, senior disciples like Evan owned fairy weapons. But Evan lost his in a bet with Yan. He should have exchanged points to get another one, but he had been too busy improving his strength to earn points and get a new sword. So all this time, Evan was only using an ordinary mysterious weapon. That was also the reason why he entered this competition. He wanted to take the opportunity to ask Kenneth for a favor, a new fairy weapon. According to the tournament guidelines, the first prize was a fairy weapon. So this whole time, Evan was merely using a makeshift weapon that was mediocre at best. A mysterious weapon was no match for a spiritual weapon, let alone a fairy weapon. But Evan had somehow used his regular sword in a fairy weapon way. If he didn't use the falling flowers sword to attack, he would have saved himself from the embarrassment. The sword would not have broken so soon. Usually, in fights, swords crossed several times. But the falling flowers sword was different. For those using this, the speed of the attack was a critical factor. And for every second, the sword thrust thousands of times. In their previous combat, Evan chopped at Zen with his sword countless times but was blocked each time. So, his makeshift sword collided with Zen's streamer sword for many, many times. How could an ordinary mysterious weapon withstand such forceful collisions? And finally, the stress due to the collisions accumulated to create a mass that caused a change in the shape of Evan's sword, resulting in damage. Looking at the damaged sword, Zen breathed a sigh of relief and momentarily relaxed. He knew a broken sword did not mean victory for him. After all, this was merely a friendly competition, and Evan could always borrow a sword somewhere. But this setback gave him a chance to recover, regroup, and take time to think of a way to defeat the falling flowers sword. On the other hand, Evan wanted to scream out loud. He was on the verge of winning, but the bloody sword denied him the victory. How could his sword snap at this crucial juncture? He tossed the broken sword violently, and with a mournful face approached Elder Jay for help. Elder Jay, could you please lend me a sword? Reluctantly, the Cloud Sect elder shook his head. I don't use a sword, so how can I lend you any? Hearing the reply, Evan looked at the 100,000 disciples watching the match and begged, would any of you lend me a sword? To his utter dismay, no one responded to his request. Disheartened, Evan swore in his mind, dang it. I am the most senior disciple of Cloud Sect. How dare these people deny me like this? I swear to heaven that if I don't enter Cloud Hall and remain an elder in Cloud Sect, I would kick everyone's sorry rears. Finally, he threw Yan a hopeful glance. Before he could speak, the female warrior had already anticipated him. And what should you call me? She teased. Although Yan was no longer kept in Hell Mountain, her true identity was still a secret. She didn't want Evan to call her by name. Evan understood what she meant. With a resigned sigh, he said, my queen, can I have my Cloud Return sword back? What did you say? Your Cloud Return sword? Yan's eyes flashed. Her brows were raised to mock Evan. Oh no, I didn't say that. I mean, you're the current owner of the Cloud Return sword. Can I borrow your Cloud Return sword, please? The senior disciple knew he had to ask nicely. After all, he had lost the sword to Yan, and he had to rely on her mercy to use it again. His tone pleased Yan, and she looked at him with a smile of satisfaction. But as Evan thought she was about to lend him the sword, her smile disappeared. She answered coldly, no, you can't. Goo, what did you say? You said no, you piece of. Evan felt like swearing but held back his tongue. Yan was his last hope. And Cloud Return sword was originally his weapon, which he used for a long time. The sword was so familiar to him like it was a part of his body. Using it again would give him the edge. And submitting to humiliation was his only choice. But the true reason for refusing Evan was simple. Yan had spotted Zen immersed in meditation and she knew he was thinking of ways to defeat Evan. She was simply buying him time. The fight was not a fair competition. And it was reasonable for her to help her brother to win. As neither could convince the other, Zen decided to interrupt. He opened his eyes and with a confident smile suggested to Yan, let him borrow the sword. Chapter 308, Intercept. The competition made Yan nervous but when she saw Zen's smile, she obediently nodded. Her brother said that he had a solution in mind, so she brought out the Cloud Return sword and gave it to Evan. Evan stretched out his arms and took the sword. He gently stroked its snow-white body, which was made of a special material. It looked like wood, not gold or iron. However, a metallic sound could be heard when the blade was touched. Alas, I have no choice. I couldn't use my life vitality. With this broken mysterious weapon, I can't continue the contest. Now, it will be better after I take my cloud return sword. I think this sword wouldn't break again. I'll see how you will resist it, Zen, he declared. After that, Evan lightly turned his hand and the snow-white sword's shadows formed consecutive trochal discs, which ceaselessly spun around his hand. In turn, Zen lightly shook his streamer sword. Take action, he casually said. Evan lifted the cloud return sword and shook it again, then the snow-white sword released a torrent of snow-white sword radiance. Defeat it, Evan shouted. Layers upon layers of snow-white sword radiance rolled back and forth like clouds. Then they rushed towards Zen, the killing intention hidden well within it. Since they were only allowed to use the sword at the competition, and no usage of life vitality or other cultivation methods was acceptable, Evan was unable to strengthen his sword, a mysterious weapon with life vitality. He knew his weapon was fragile and would suffer when it resisted Zen's fairy weapon, so he always restrained his strength and didn't dare release all of it. Now that Evan had the cloud return sword back and didn't have any hesitations, he attacked more quickly and forcefully. When the battle ensued, Zen still defended and resisted with the circle parry. Twang, twang, a muffled sound, like a woodpecker boring a hole into a tree trunk, was heard when the cloud return sword chopped Zen's streamer sword. You look confident and I think you've found a way, but for some reason you still defend passively. You disappoint me, Evan said with a frown as he inclined the sword radiance in his hand. If you go on, you will drag out your feeble existence at most. If you're forced to the edge of the competition field again, you will surely lose. Don't waste any more time, just admit defeat, you'll even look better, Evan chuckled in a low voice. Sword radiance after sword radiance spread like clouds from his hand once again. He waved the sword freely as it was a leisurely thing to do. Meanwhile, Yan, who stood not far away, was confused. Her brother appeared confident and must have found a way to resist the falling flower's sword, which had endless sword radiance like falling flowers, so why hadn't he changed his move yet? Why did he still use the circle parry to resist Evan's attack? The spectating crowd only shook their heads when they saw that Zen still tended to lose after Evan changed his sword. After all, many people expected to see a good performance from Zen. They hoped that he would become more powerful when he resisted a strong opponent and defeat Evan with sword moves. However, Zen had only forced Evan into a difficult position with the basic swordsmanship in the beginning. After Evan drew the sword, he continuously suppressed Zen, who couldn't hit back. It turned out that way since they still had a huge difference in strength. Now, everyone in the crowd waited to see Zen be defeated. Zen continued to move backward to the left of the competition field. 5 steps, 10 steps, 50 steps, 150 steps. As he did so, he secretly counted his steps. The whole competition field was 200 steps wide, and there were less than 30 steps behind him now. However, his face remained stoic and he continued to calmly resist with the circle parry. 190 steps. 195 steps. 197 steps. The smile on Evan's face got wider. When he had forced Zen to the last step, he laughed harshly and said, "Go down, Zen. You have lost." When Evan was about to chop with his sword, a blast of power suddenly surged from his waist, through his shoulder and arm then to his wrist. Zen had unsheathed the streamer sword like a dragon that slithered out of a cave. Crack! The streamer sword's blade successfully blocked the 3-inch part of the cloud return sword's blade. Since the streamer sword had blocked it, Evan's well-prepared sword radiance was destroyed. A frown formed on Evan's forehead. He tried to shake off more sword radiance with his backhand, but Zen seemed to have expected his move and waved his streamer sword again. Zen chopped on the 3-inch part of the cloud return sword in the same way and resisted Evan's attack once more. Intercept. This move was one of the basic swordsmanship moves especially used to intercept the opponent's sword move. It was impossible for Zen to directly resist the falling flower's sword with his current strength. The move was so complicated that he couldn't clearly see its true moves. After he thought hard for a long time, Zen finally figured out a way. It was true that he couldn't resist the falling flower's sword, but he could resist the sword before the radiance appeared. Zen ensured that Evan wouldn't be able to use this swordsmanship. Every time Evan tried to raise his hand, Zen's intercept blocked the cloud return sword in advance. Zen's swordsmanship was smooth, steady, and accurate. "You!" Evan exclaimed. Now it was his turn to feel desperate. Whenever he started to use the swordsmanship, which was always ready, it was blocked by Zen. He was so frustrated. It felt like when he wanted to scream, someone would cover his mouth every time before he could even do it. His voice was held back, so it was impossible for him not to feel annoyed. The problem was, it didn't happen just once or twice. Evan had waved his sword a dozen times, but Zen blocked it all with numerous intercepts in a short time. Evan was so angry to the point that he almost spat blood out after Zen destroyed his well-prepared swordsmanship. Thus, Evan wanted to move backward and stay further away from Zen. However, if he moved 10 steps backward, Zen would follow him with 10 steps as well like a shadow and keep the 3-inch distance from him. Evan thought that he couldn't get rid of Zen unless he summoned the life vitality. Evan had the higher cultivation level than Zen. It was common knowledge that his body strength should be more powerful. Therefore, he hoped to get rid of Zen's sword with his great bodily strength and forcefully use the Falling Flower's sword. However, when Evan started to release his strength, he found that Zen's sword was as heavy as a small mountain and he couldn't get rid of it. How was that possible? Why was this guy's strength so powerful? Evan didn't know that Zen's terrifying strength had shocked many people too, and he wasn't the first one. He was going crazy. Evan was truly humiliated indeed. He was unexpectedly defeated by a junior at grade 2 of the nature level, with the basic swordsmanship. He was always shameless and out of his mind, but he didn't take the way of martial arts lightly. Otherwise, how could he be ranked number 1 in Cloud Sect? It could be said that the martial arts was his greatest pride. Everyone could laugh at his idiotic mannerisms, but nobody could look down on his cultivation on the way of martial arts. However, what could he even do if he was depressed? Zen made sure Evan couldn't use the swordsmanship so he couldn't attack at all. If he could summon the life vitality, he would have forced Zen's sword away and chopped him to pieces with it. However, the point was the rule had already been set and he would lose if he used the life vitality. Am I really inferior to Zen in the swordsmanship? Evan thought subconsciously. The people began to exclaim and chatter excitedly among themselves. Things have changed. Zen truly defeated Evan in swordplay. Zen's basic swordsmanship is truly strange. If I can learn the basic swordsmanship, I can also defeat Evan with only the sword move, without using life vitality. You're just bragging. Can you go up there and try? One countered. He added, everyone thinks that Evan is an idiot, but if you take him as a fool, you will be a fool. It's not a coincidence that Evan has been the number 1. Zen had successfully turned the tables, and it was beyond the 100,000 spectators' expectations. After all, Zen was forced by Evan's sword to the left side of the competition field, then to the right, then left again. Zen was so patient and calm that he only hit back when it was almost his last step. In the crowd, Yan couldn't help but nod appreciatively as she watched her brother's performance. She didn't misjudge him, he had found a way, but she didn't expect that he would resist so strongly that Evan lost the power to fight back. This time, it was Zen's turn to force Evan to the corner of the competition field. Chapter 309, The Rewards. Clang, Zen cut on Evan's sword. As he raised his sword, Zen stopped him with another intercept. It was a basic swordsmanship, but the move was flawless. Evan drew the sword. Clang, tension gripped him. The senior disciple took the sword again. Clang, a third time. Everyone waited with bated breath. But Evan was unable to perform his move. Do not intercept my sword again, okay? Please, he begged. The once arrogant face turned mournful. People watching the match heard Evan's shameless words and were shocked speechless. Keeping the sword posture, Zen gently held the streamer sword and silently shook his head. Well, in that case, there seems to be no other way. I'll fight it out with you. Evan shouted. There was a swift change in his facial expression. A while ago, he was pleading with Zen. In a snap, there was now a ruthless look on his face. At the same time, Evan's sword technique also changed. The Falling Flower's sword was a very light and agile swordsmanship. As Evan changed to another form of swordsmanship, a powerful momentum came out of his body as his feet remained firmly fixed in the arena like a mountain god. Taking a step to retreat, Zen's swordsmanship changed accordingly. He knew he could not block Evan's next attack with intercept. His opponent was strong, so he had to be stronger to subdue Evan's sword trick. Groundbreaking sword. As Evan called out his next move, a steady and destructive sword shot out from his hand, and it was nothing like a cutter. A cutter usually went in the way of mighty and strong, but the sword typically went in the way of smart and agile. It was rare to see such powerful sword shot. And the shot was likely to cut through the mountains and even split the earth. As the shot was released, Zen's eyelids fluttered involuntarily, and his wrist dropped causing the sword tip to collapse. Flick the sword. Flick the sword was the most powerful move in the basic swordsmanship. Once simplified, the power of it became even purer, and one could not escape the fate of chipping. Boom! The sound jolted the audience. The flash when the two swords collided was made more intense by the sudden sound heard in the arena. Then they saw a white sword spinning like a roulette wheel before falling to the ground. It became clearer to everyone that Evan's cloud return sword had been flicked away. And then to everyone's surprise, Zen was pointing the streamer sword's tip against Evan's chest. Shocked at what just happened, Evan stood motionless, disbelief written all over his face. His chest was heaving as he breathed heavily. The result of the competition exceeded his expectations. But the disciples around the arena seemed to have anticipated this scene. Zen hadn't lost a single combat since the All Peaks competition started. In the swordsmanship competition, Evan had been suppressing Zen, although the tide suddenly turned in this battle. It was clear to everyone present that Zen's victory was inevitable, considering the young disciple's ability to become stronger and more powerful when facing stronger opponents, and this was Zen's most impressive characteristic. Even Evan could not stop Zen from winning. What an exceptional talent! What was most unusual was the fact that Zen's performance had completely convinced everyone watching the competition. If he had failed, it would have been a strange turn of events. You lost, Zen said with a faint smile. But Evan refused to accept his defeat. No, I don't accept that. You are no match for me. Evan screamed. He was now hysterical. Evan, a voice boomed. You have lost, Elder Jay rebuked the senior disciple. He wore a long face to show his displeasure as he entered the battlefield. The Cloud Sect Elder had been watching the battle and was very clear about the result. If I could use life vitality, it just needs 3 moves to beat you. 3 moves would have been enough to defeat you. He argued with reluctance. On the other hand, Zen was too lazy to pay attention to the idiot. He carefully wiped the streamer sword and returned it to his space ring. Then he said, "You're right. I really couldn't beat you if we both applied life vitality. But I am sure that before long, I would defeat you." You. Evan choked on his words and was unable to finish. The young Zen was right. Evan was unsurpassed for his great talent, but Zen was even more talented. Without a doubt, even Evan would have a hard time beating the younger disciple should he have more time to practice. But Evan wasn't afraid of that. Casually, he said, "I don't care about the future. At least now you're not my opponent." Then with more bravado, he challenged, "Let's fight again with life vitality. Come on. If I don't defeat you with 3 moves, I will call you my master." Evan was clamoring for another fight with Zen. Just as he finished speaking, 100,000 disciples thought of the same thing. Evan was an idiot. And he deserved the reputation of an idiot. With a smile, Zen looked back and as he was about to walk down the fighting field, he said, "I am not interested in being your master." Then he jumped down the fighting field and walked over to Yan. He left the still unwilling Evan in a daze in the arena. Seeing Evan still standing there, Elder Jay had to shake his head. Has the man no shame? Okay, let it be, he thought. Then he threw Evan out of the arena. Then Elder Jay began to announce the rankings of the Cloud Sect chart. Evan was used to being in the first place, and this honor could have been his once again. But that was not to be the case now. It was his bad fortune that he competed with Zen on swordsmanship. Because of his defeat, Evan fell from first to second place, and then he was removed from the list. Now, without a doubt, the first place on the Cloud Sect chart was occupied by Zen Luo, followed by Patrick Pei in second place, while Rochewa took third place. The rankings from first to 100 was announced by Elder Jay loudly. Meanwhile, there was no need to read the succeeding 900 because the list was going to be posted in 33 peaks of the Cloud Sect for every disciple to check their rankings. The Cloud Sect chart was the highest honor for every disciple of the sect. As long as you were one of 1,000 on the Cloud Sect chart, you were part of the elite 1,000 from the tens of thousands of disciples. By checking the Cloud Sect chart, many disciples would practice and encourage themselves, hoping one day their names could be on the list, too. They could aim for top 100, top 10, top 3. For many disciples, achieving this dream might seem impossible. But now, they've seen a disciple at stage 2 of nature level achieve that. Perhaps, it was almost unimaginable in many disciples' eyes. If they didn't see it, they would never have believed it. What an inspiration for others. Believe it or not, they witnessed something unimaginable take place before their very eyes, and in the end, they agreed Zen deserved the first place. His impressive defeat of Evan in swordsmanship meant no one could question Zen's strength. He not only displayed amazing talent in martial arts, but he was also the biggest miracle since the establishment of the Cloud sect. And they believed there would be no similar miracle in the future. After announcing the results, Elder Jie turned to Zen and said, "Zen Luo, the leader asked to see you. Roche Hua and Patrick Pei, you two are to go with him." The three looked at one another. When Elder Jie finished speaking, a flying chariot stopped in front of them, and a steward escorted the three disciples aboard. Then the flying chariot headed westward. The other disciples could only look at them with envy. They all knew that one reward for the top three was the Cloud Road trial. To walk on Cloud Road, one needed 1,000,000 points or 2,000,000 cubic crystals. That was to say, as top three, each disciple won 2,000,000 cubic crystals for himself. Many big noble clans might not be able to afford it. And even for the top 7 noble clans, it was difficult to offer such a huge amount of cubic crystals. With a small smile, Yan glanced at the downhearted Evan. "Why are you not one of them?" Quote. Evan tried to sound callous, "Who knows? I'm not interested in the Cloud Road. The leader might not even be willing to let me go." He shrugged. Evan had been to the Cloud Road but fell asleep midway, which made Kenneth angry. It was not a big deal for Evan to fail the Cloud Road trial. But what made him furious was that some people from Cloud Hall knew that and sneered at him for it. It greatly embarrassed Kenneth. As for Evan's future, Kenneth could have other plans for him. Standing on the flying chariot, the strong wind whipped across their faces. Within an hour, they came to a mountain in Cloud Sect. In the mountain was a simple palace, and it was here where the leader of Cloud Sect lived. It was known as the Cloud Palace. The Cloud Palace had a very distinct architecture. Its cornice was rolled up like clouds. Were it not the home of the leader, it looked more like a fairy palace, sitting high on a mountain. Finally, the flying chariot fully stopped on a platform in front of the palace's gate. The steward that escorted them during the ride now led them inside Cloud Palace. In the middle of the vast palace stood Kenneth. He stood motionless like a statue, with thick air puffs coming out of him. Zen, Patrick, and Roche walked in together, stopped in front of Kenneth and saluted him. The leader looked closely at the three disciples, satisfied, and nodded to acknowledge their presence. Their performances at the All Peaks competition considerably impressed Kenneth. Both Patrick and Roche had performed far better than the talents in previous battles. He was disappointed last time. That time, the first place went to that Evan. Although his performance was strong, Kenneth was not pleased with him. For the last 3 years, his mates at Cloud Hall had been sneering at him after Evan fell asleep on Cloud Road. That depressed him a lot. This time, he was going to shock those people. Of that, he was quite confident. He would finally shut their mouths for scoffing at him all this time. Fortunately, the result of this All Peaks competition did not disappoint him. Not only was he impressed by the talented Roche, but with Patrick as well. Both of them performed strongly. More importantly for him was that Zen took first place. After looking over the two disciples, his eyes finally settled on Zen. "Zen Luo, there will be a turbidity clearing pill for you as a reward for taking the first place. There will also be a fairy weapon for you. Now, you can choose which fairy weapon you want." His eyes twinkled while saying this. Excitedly, Zen asked, "Fairy weapon? Can I choose the one I like?" He couldn't stop bobbing his head in excitement at the thought of owning another fairy weapon. Because of Lily's impressive performance, Zen was desperate for another fairy weapon. She proved to be stronger than he was, as she executed the sword dance and malicious aura at the same time. So, Zen was looking forward to getting another fairy weapon. Chapter 310, A New Beginning. Zen stood deep in thought and stared at the floor. If he had 2 fairy weapons, he could give one to Lily and keep the other, so their fighting capacity would increase more. However, he wondered what kind of fairy weapon the leader would give him. The fairy weapon came in 3 grades: low grade, middle grade, and top grade. There was a huge difference between the low grade and the top grade fairy weapons. Zen didn't expect the leader to give him a top grade fairy weapon. After all, it didn't exist in the eastern region, so it was unrealistic to dream of having one. Still, he would be glad if the leader could give him a middle grade fairy weapon. When Kenneth noticed Zen's expectant face, he shook his head and smiled. He then clapped his hands and indicated for the stewards to bring out the weapons. The Cloud Sect was a rich place with a long history, and it had many fairy weapons. Kenneth didn't bring out the most powerful weapon every time. The weapon's grade depended on the disciple's strength. The cloud-returned sword that the idiot, Evan, had chosen last time was a powerful fairy weapon, but he didn't cherish it at all. He even lost it to Yan in a bet. Kenneth felt really sorry for that sword. This time however, Kenneth thought that he wouldn't make the same mistake and trusted that Zen would cherish the fairy weapon given to him. He had high expectations for Zen. He hoped that Zen would not only pass the trial of the Cloud Road, but also surpass the other disciples. That way, the people of Cloud Hall wouldn't trouble him anymore. Shortly after, a dozen stewards emerged from behind the hall. They each held a long, narrow jade box in their hands. The stewards stood in a row, and exhibited the weapons in the jade boxes in front of Zen one by one. There were all kinds of swords in the jade boxes, and 3 of them were middle-grade fairy weapons. Others were all low-grade fairy weapons. It was known that there were only a few low-grade fairy weapons even in the top 7 noble clans, and there was only 1 middle-grade fairy weapon in each clan at most. What was more, 2 of the top 7 noble clans didn't even have a middle-grade fairy weapon. Furthermore, the top 7 noble clans had various types of fairy weapons, including spears, knives, swords, and so on. Kenneth knew that Zen was a swordsman, so all the weapons in the jade boxes were swords, 3 of which were middle-grade weapons. There were so many swords of the fairy weapon type in the Cloud sect. What more about the other kinds of weapons? How many knives of the fairy weapon type were there in Cloud sect? And what about the spears as well? Therefore, it was safe to say that Cloud sect was so wealthy, that maybe the Burning Sky Palace was only less than half of it. Meanwhile, both Patrick and Rocher gasped in surprise, and then looked enviously at the swords in the boxes. Rocher was especially jealous of Zen now. Although his blood-corroding sword was already strong enough, all swordsmen loved swords. How could he just stand there indifferently while he looked at the glimmering swords of the fairy weapons? Unfortunately, only the first placer in the All Peaks competition would be rewarded a fairy weapon, so he wasn't eligible for the award. On the other hand, Zen's eyes swept over the fairy weapon class swords one after another. All of them caught his attention, especially the 3 middle-grade fairy weapons. The first middle-grade sword's whole body glittered green. Its blade seemed to be made of amber and had some strange runes embossed on it. It felt odd to look at the sword because the weapon seemed to look back as well, as if it had peeked into the soul of its observer. The sword must have a strong soul power, Zen thought. The second middle-grade sword looked rather ordinary and even had a blunt-looking blade. It was a heavy sword. There was a saying which went something like, the more mundane an object looked on the surface, the more extraordinary and exquisite it might be. Although the sword wasn't sharp, it might have devastating attacks. Maybe it could shatter a house if it was thrown on the ground. However, Zen didn't need this kind of sword for the time being. Finally, Zen fixed his eyes on the third middle-grade sword. As soon as he stared at it, he felt a strong killing spirit rush inside him. The sword was a vibrant blood red. Both the sword's blade and hilt were bright crimson, as if they were really made of blood. Moreover, the strong malicious aura that emanated from it made Zen feel that countless creatures had been slain by this sword before. "What's the name of this sword?" Zen finally asked. A smile curved up the corners of Kenneth's lips. "I knew you would be interested in this sword. It's the blood-drinking sword," he answered. "Blood-drinking sword," Zen repeated. "A good name," Zen added and nodded appreciatively. A great amount of power of Lily's sword dance depended on the malicious aura. The sword had a strong malicious aura too, so both of them might become more powerful if Lily wielded this sword. Thus, Zen wanted this sword after he had thought about it for a while. At that moment, Kenneth suddenly spoke up, "I know you will choose this sword. Although the killing way of cultivating sword skills is powerful, it's not easy to practice in this way and you'll have to pay a heavy price. It's dangerous to practice in the killing way, so do you still want to continue this way?" he asked. Kenneth had seen Zen use the malicious aura once. While the killing way was dangerous, he didn't interfere with the disciples, training in Cloud sect, and he certainly wouldn't stop Zen from practicing it. As long as Zen didn't do anything ruthless such as slaughtering or killing innocent people, it would be fine. However, the killing way wasn't a good choice in most people's eyes. After all, if the practitioner couldn't control the malicious aura in his body after a certain level of practice, the malicious aura itself would attack him. Thus, the practitioner might lose his mind and spiral into madness, and he would probably die in the end. Now, Kenneth knew Zen had the malicious aura but he didn't know where it came from. What was more, nobody could feel the existence of the malicious aura in his body when he restrained it. Kenneth wondered if Zen had a special way to restrain the malicious aura inside him. Everyone had their own secrets, so Kenneth wouldn't ask too much about it. However, Rocher knew that Zen once went to the Killing Sword Mountain. That was where Zen had gotten the malicious aura. Therefore, he knew that Zen definitely had a special way to restrain the malicious aura. "Yes, sir, I want to get the blood-drinking sword," Zen said. His face was firm and absolute as he made his choice. It was clear to Kenneth that Zen was definitely a determined person, since he had achieved many great things with such a strong talent. He knew that Zen wouldn't change his mind just because of his words. On the contrary, he would even doubt Zen's perseverance if Zen gave up the killing way, and the sword as well because of his doubts. Each way of practicing sword skills had their own difficulties. What a real, powerful swordsman needed to do was to choose his own way of practicing, and hold on. "Well, in that case, I will respect your choice. The blood-drinking sword is yours now," Kenneth said as he clapped his hands. The steward who held the blood-drinking sword immediately walked to Zen and presented the weapon in front of him. The other stewards closed the remaining jade boxes and left the hall. Rocher inwardly swallowed and his eyes remained glued to the other stewards' backs as they left the hall. He couldn't do anything except watch them walk away with those swords. After all, he wasn't the first placer in Cloud Sect. Meanwhile, Zen held the blood-drinking sword in his hand and waved it for a bit. Then, he put it into the space ring and stood next to Rocher and Patrick. It was clear that the awarding of Zen's fairy weapon wasn't the only reason Kenneth wanted them to be with him today. After the last steward left the hall, Kenneth took out a small square jade box from his waist and threw it to Zen. "It's the second award, the turbidity-clearing pill," he told Zen. The turbidity-clearing pill was a medicine that was needed to take after a disciple reached the illuminating soul realm, so Zen couldn't take it for now. When the disciples reached the illuminating soul realm, every one of them would hit a bottleneck that was hard to pass through. Thus, they needed to take the turbidity-clearing pill to help them practice. The preciousness of the turbidity-clearing pill didn't need to be explained. Only a few turbidity-clearing pills were produced in the Cloud Sect every year, and even those saints and elders greedily coveted it. After Zen put the pill away, Kenneth spoke again. "The reason I called you here is that I want to talk to you about the Cloud Road," he said. At his words, Zen, Rocher, and Patrick turned serious. The Cloud Road was a matter of great importance for their future prospects. Many martial artists in the eastern region could only reach the nature level even after they practiced for over a lifetime. The martial artists who were nature creatures had lifespans and strengths far beyond ordinary people, and they could live quite a good life in most parts of the eastern region. However, as Cloud Sect's top disciples, they looked forward to making great achievements in a bigger world and not only in Cloud Sect. Thus, passing the trial of the Cloud Road and getting into the Cloud Hall was the beginning to the bigger world. Chapter 311, Tristan Luo. When Kenneth saw that the three disciples all wore serious expressions, he simply smiled at them. "Don't worry, the Cloud Road in the eastern region is not as difficult as you have imagined. What is more, you are more powerful than your peers. I'm sure that all of you will do great in the Cloud Road trial," he said. Meanwhile, Rocher still looked a bit skeptical. "Master Shi, is the Cloud Road really a road?" he asked. "Yes, it is, but in reality, the name Cloud Road isn't quite accurate. It's just what we call it here in Cloud Sect. Its original name was Trial Road for Cultivators," Kenneth said slowly. The three disciples nodded thoughtfully at Kenneth's words. The martial art cultivators of the eastern region saw Kenneth as just one of the many strong men from Cloud Hall. On the other hand, they saw the Emperor of the Burning Sky Empire as a member of Cloud Hall as well. Once a disciple passed the test of the Trial Road for Cultivators, he was eligible to join Cloud Hall. It meant that he would have the same status as the leader of Cloud Sect and the Emperor of the Burning Sky Empire. It was why the cultivators in the eastern region liked to call it the Cloud Road, also known as a road to Cloud Hall. Some legends even said that once a disciple passed Cloud Road, he would likely become an immortal. Of course, such legends were obviously exaggerations. However, these legends showed just how much they yearned for the Cloud Road. Unfortunately, history showed that only a selected few were ever qualified to set foot on the Cloud Road. For most people, that road was destined to exist only in their imaginations. You should know that the three of you aren't the only ones on the Trial Road. Since there is still a month before the Trial Road begins, I expect you to be better prepared and achieve good results after a month, Kenneth said. The three disciples nodded obediently in understanding. The other good thing was Kenneth could also get a great reward if the disciples of Cloud Sect got good achievements in the trial road for cultivators. If these outstanding disciples managed to join Cloud Hall on his recommendation, he could get more rewards. It was the reason Kenneth tuned in attentively to the All Peaks competition and the strengths of the top 3 disciples. Upon hearing what Kenneth had said, the 3 men began to fantasize about the events and arrangements for the coming month. However, they all knew that the trial was so important for them that they would do their best to pass and get good grades. As for what they would encounter on the road and who else would attend the trial, Kenneth spared them the details. They would know everything when the trial came. After their discussion, they left Cloud Palace, but Zen didn't return to Drizzle Peak. He had one more important thing to do. He would go home. He would fix all the problems of the Luo clan before he would set out on his way to the trial road for cultivators. Soon enough, he had arrived in the Luo clan property in the Sea County. A servant swept the fallen leaves in the open space in front of the Luo house. It was particularly cold this winter. All the members of the Luo family weren't happy during the spring festival. The grand activities that were elaborately prepared in the past years, such as the sacred ceremony, the worshipping of ancestors, and walking around the holy mountain, were rushed this year. Everyone in the Luo clan, from the master to the servants, were overcome with anxiety. After the previous master of the Luo clan, Mike Luo, had died, the clan's status dropped sharply in the Sea County. When the top families of Sea Country met to discuss the distribution of mines in the northern part of the Sea County a few days ago, they didn't call the master of Luo clan to attend at all. That only meant that they completely excluded the Luo family from the distribution of benefits, and they wouldn't receive any of them anymore. Some members of the younger generation of the Luo clan were dissatisfied, and claimed that they would make the top families pay for their decision. However, what they had said was useless. Bryson, the current master of Luo clan, did not raise any objections to the decision. When the servant thought of this, he shook his head as he swept the floor. The Luo clan might become an ordinary and unremarkable small family in the Sea County under the control of Bryson. But it wouldn't make much to do with him. He was only a servant here. He wouldn't lose anything even if the Luo clan was gone. The worst-case scenario for him was to lose his job and leave here. As he swept the floor, he heard a sudden noise coming from the Luo house. He looked around and saw a man flew out of the door and fell heavily on the ground. The man was covered in blood and bruises from head to toe. "Gray, you're just a servant," he shouted angrily. The sound of a set of heavy footsteps followed. "I'm a descendant of the Luo clan. How dare you kick me out of my house?" the man yelled. Gray emerged and stepped on the door's threshold with a smug smile on his face. "How dare me? Do you mean I can't drive you away?" he asked. "Okay, do you dare step inside the door again?" Several burly men stood next to Gray. They looked at the child of the Luo family who sprawled on the ground with the same sarcastic expression as Gray. This child was quite stubborn. Even though he was badly hurt, he jumped up from the ground and dashed to the gate of the Luo house. But before he could even cross the gate, 2 strong men immediately followed him and caught his hands. The 2 strong men were at the bone refining level, while the child of the Luo family was only at the skin refining level. He was obviously no match for these 2 men at all. Thus, he couldn't move when the 2 men seized him. He could only scream in anger. "Gray, you mongrel, I'll kill you." There was only a sinister smile on Gray's face. Then he raised a thick stick he held in one hand, lifted it up, and smashed it hard against the child's legs. Snap, crack, crack, the sound of fractured leg bones came after the stick's heavy blows. "Ouch, ouch, ah," the child screamed in agony as his legs were broken by Gray. The 2 strong men then carelessly threw the child away. His smaller body tumbled down the stairs and he lay in pain on the ground. This child proved to be really stubborn. Even with his broken legs, he still wanted to climb back to the gates of the Luo house. He pulled himself up heavily on the steps as droplets of blood fell on the ground. The servant who swept the grounds looked at the scene and sighed. The blood stained the steps and he would have to clean them again. It did not mean that he felt no sympathy for the child. He had worked diligently for the Luo clan for several decades, and had deep feelings for the family. It was just that the current Luo family was no longer the family it used to be. These things occurred almost several times every month, and he had gotten used to it. It was nothing he could handle. It was clear that the Luo family was problematic, but what could he do as a mere servant? "Come on, climb up here," Gray said. He went up the steps and kicked the child in the chest. The little boy had managed to climb up the stairs, but he fell down again. You climb so slowly, like a tortoise. One of the strongmen laughed. The other one laughed as well. The servant only shook his head and continued to sweep the ground. Just then, he spotted two people who headed to the house not too far away. They turned out to be a man and a woman. The man looked quite handsome. His eyes were bright as if they were lit by the stars themselves. The woman was unnaturally beautiful. She looked like a goddess from the heavens. To look at her he felt like he had desecrated her. Who are they? The servant thought. Why are they heading to the Luo house? Are they just passing by? He had so many questions in his mind. Soon enough, he stopped thinking those thoughts because the man and woman were in front of the gate of the Luo house. Zen walked to the gate, followed by Yan. The beautiful scenery of their hometown, Sea County, made them happy upon their arrival. However, the happiness faded as they got closer to the Luo house. When they saw what had happened at the door, Zen couldn't restrain himself any longer. Meanwhile, the child continued to desperately climb up the stairs. He was in such severe pain that he had gone pale. It was only by sheer will that he managed to climb up the steps. He knew that no matter how hard he tried, it would be in vain. But as a child of the Luo family, there were some things worthy to fight for at the cost of his life. When he had climbed up to the gate once again, he suddenly found two people who stood next to him. He didn't know them. Who are they? Why do I feel that the man's face looks familiar? He thought. At that moment, Zen squatted down beside the child. Tristan, what are you doing? He asked. Why does he know my name? Tristan was confused. He was so curious that he had forgotten the pain of his broken legs. He gritted his teeth and struggled to talk. I'm going home. Gray, that mongrel, he has no right to kick me out of my house. He spat out. Attaboy, Zen said. Then he took out a pill from his space ring and gave it to Tristan. Take it and then climb back. There are no black sheep in our Luo clan. Tristan slowly raised one hand and took the pill. A pill, although he was badly hurt, he could still distinguish the pill and its value. It must be worth a lot of money. Tristan swallowed the pill without hesitation. A warm feeling soon cooled in his stomach and a cool sensation hit his legs. The wounds on his body healed quickly at a fast rate. After a while, the pain in his legs had disappeared completely. What kind of pill is this? How can it heal my wounds instantly? I'm afraid that the best pill in my Luo family can't be compared to this pill. It is 100 times more effective than the best pill in the Luo family, Tristan thought. He was definitely shocked. He turned over after a bit and stood up from the ground. Meanwhile, Gray and his men became angry. Who are you? How dare you meddle in our business? He asked furiously. He could see that Zen and Yan weren't ordinary people, but he didn't recognize them. It was normal for him not to recognize Yan since she was only a little girl when she left the Luo house. Now, she had grown into a beautiful young lady. As for Zen, he had changed a lot. He was now in his teens, and the cultivation had made his figure bulkier. His temperament was even more impressive, and his appearance was quite handsome. Therefore, Gray and Tristan didn't recognize them at once. Zen and Yan didn't seem to hear what Gray said. Zen turned to Tristan and said, Tristan, let's go home. Tristan looked at him confusedly. Go home. He was surprised at Zen's words. Did he say go home? Only the children of the Luo clan can call this place home, right? Suddenly, something flashed in Tristan's mind. He then looked at Zen with wide, ecstatic eyes. When he was about to call Zen's name, Zen nodded at him. He put his hand on Tristan's shoulder, his eyes filled with resolution. He turned to Yan and nodded to her as well. Come on, let's go home. Chapter 312. It's useless to apologize. It was at that precise moment that Tristan suddenly recognized Zen. He looked at him in surprise. There were two shocking events which had taken place within the Luo clan last year. The first one was that Zen had been taken away by the weapon refining master Evil Lan, and the second one was that Perrin had been disabled at the Cloud sect. No one knew whether Zen was still alive or not after his capture, and where he was now. It was still a mystery who had disabled Perrin's skills. All the Luo clan members remained tight-lipped about these two events. Initially, they had all thought that Zen must have died. Since the weapon refiner Evil Lan was said to be extremely wicked and cruel, Zen wouldn't have had a chance to escape his clutches. However, as time went on, rumors spread among the Luo clan. Someone still believed that he had died, but others said that Zen was still alive and had become a disciple of Cloud sect, the holy land that every practitioner yearned to go to. Although they described many details which sounded quite real, most members of the Luo clan didn't believe it. After all, they had witnessed Zen being taken away by evil Lan, who was supposed to be the most vile person among his contemporaries. Besides, it wasn't that easy to become a disciple of Cloud Sect. After years of training, Perrin was the only child in the Luo clan who had reached the cultivation level high enough to be accepted by Cloud Sect. As far as the Luo clan was concerned, Zen couldn't have been on par with Perrin at all, so most of the family members didn't take the rumors seriously. Before they could completely recover from the shock of Zen's being taken away, Perrin's skills had suddenly been disabled and he had been sent back home from Cloud Sect. It was a big blow to the Luo clan. Each clan in Sea County paid great attention to the training of their young generation, and many of them would do anything that was required to send their children to Cloud Sect for cultivation. These clans didn't expect much. They just hoped that their children could become an inner disciple of Cloud Sect and reach the nature level. Even that was a big reward for them. Mike Luo had only reached the nature level many years ago and that was a big deal. For most people, a nature creature was powerful and talented enough to be the backbone of a clan. It meant that even if a clan member was just an outer disciple of Cloud Sect, no other clans would have dared to challenge it so easily. The other clans feared that if this outer disciple ever happened to reach a high enough level of cultivation, he would seek revenge. Perrin had already reached the nature level and had even played up to a noble clan, the Wong clan. Since everyone thought that Perrin would have a promising future and took him as the most powerful person in Sea County, the remaining clans had dared not to challenge the Luo clan even though it wasn't as powerful as it had used to be. Perrin's being disabled and his subsequent expulsion from Cloud Sect had broken the only backbone of the Luo clan. This made it vulnerable to potential enemies. Now there was no place for the Luo clan in Sea County and the businesses and mine fields which used to belong to it were taken over and divided by the others. Life had become difficult for the clan members. Later, they had overheard that it was Zen who had disabled Perrin. The rumor seemed even less credible, since Perrin had made great progress after taking the magical pill of the Luo clan. Even if Zen were still alive and had experienced some adventures, there was no way he could have competed with Perrin. No one had believed the rumor. Until Tristan saw Zen today. As someone who has rebelled against the Luo clan, Zen has dared to come back, which means he must have mastered extremely powerful skills. He might have already reached the nature level, Tristan thought. With the help of Zen, Tristan was able to walk and even slowly climb the staircase. Since his legs had just been healed, his bones couldn't stand heavy load at the moment and he had to walk slowly. Even so, Tristan was shocked by the amazing curative effect of the pill. "Stop, if you don't stop, we'll have to use extreme force," Gray shouted coldly. Although he was arrogant, Gray wasn't stupid. From the auras that Zen and Yan were exuding, he could tell that they were not ordinary cultivators, so he was afraid to offend them. And after seeing Zen take out a pill and cure Tristan's broken legs so quickly, he was more certain of his own judgment, since it was almost impossible that such a magic pill could be found anywhere in Sea County. Turning a deaf ear to Gray's threat, Zen continued to support Tristan and help him climb upstairs, and Yan followed behind the two closely. "Stop them. How dare they act wildly in front of the Luo mansion?" Seeing that his threat didn't work, Gray shot a venomous look at Zen and Yan. He couldn't figure out what level they had reached. However, he could tell that they were very young, so they wouldn't be able to compete with the whole Luo clan at their current competence. Hearing his order, several sturdy men immediately rushed downstairs. Tristan was a little worried, since all of these guards were at the bone refining level, and they were greatly competent. But he also knew that since Zen had dared to come back, he must have had his own advantages. When the sturdy men had rushed several steps forward, suddenly, a number of black spots appeared in front of Tristan. In the blink of an eye, these black spots turned into sharp thorns and flew toward the guards at a furious pace. With several puffs, a hole appeared in each of their chests, piercing their armor and bone. Blood flowed out from these cavities and a confused expression appeared on their faces. They seemed to be wondering just what was going on, and how these black thorns had suddenly hit them. They hadn't seen Zen and Yan do anything, so they couldn't understand why they were dead just like that. With several bangs, the sturdy men fell down on the ground before they could even let out a shriek. Streaks of killing aura gushed from the dead bodies of the guards and floated toward Yan. They didn't come toward Zen or Tristan because it was Yan who had summoned the black thorns and killed them. To protect Yan, Zen drew the killing aura in his direction. "I really should start practicing sword skills in the killing way from now on." Zen thought and looked at the corpses on the ground indifferently, then he assisted Tristan to move on. Gray was stunned now. He was bewildered about what had happened. How could such powerful men, who had reached the bone-refining level, had been killed in an instant without sound or light? The young man and the young woman didn't attack just now, then how did my guards die? What kind of skill did they use? Are they devils or ghosts? He wondered. Who are you? There is no fight between you and our clan, and we haven't hurt you. Why? Gray was so scared that he almost could not finish his words. The horror in his heart was about to make him cry. Finally Tristan reached the top of the staircase with the help of Zen. Can you walk by your own now? Zen asked gently. Sure, Tristan answered in a firm and confident tone. Follow me, Zen told him shortly. He then walked straight toward Gray and asked, Gray, you have really forgotten me, haven't you? Quote. Gray was confused. How does he know my name? Why did he say that I have forgotten him? Who is he? Gray measured Zen up and down and suddenly his face turned pale. Although Zen's temperament had changed a lot, his facial features remained the same. You, Zen. Gray's eyes were filled with disbelief. How could Zen come back and become so powerful? Zen, the servant who had been sweeping the floor, stopped when he heard the name. He looked at him, as shocked as Gray was at the sudden comeback of this man. He had been working here for several dozens of years, so he was quite familiar with the Luo clan. He looked at Zen carefully and became sure that it was nobody else. The young woman standing behind Zen looked familiar too. She resembled Mike, who had died many years ago. Hang on, she must be Yan. The servant had never expected that the two siblings would ever come back. He was so excited that his hands began to tremble. If he hadn't been holding the broom with all of his strength, it would most probably have fallen down. Since you know who I am, then you should also know why you have to die today. With that short and curt statement, Zen drew a sword from his space ring slowly. Please, don't kill me, please. Zen, I know I shouldn't have treated you like that. I'm sorry, please give me a chance. I can. Before Gray could continue, an icy light flashed in front of him. A wound appeared on his neck and blood oozed from it. Gray covered his neck with his hands and then fell onto the ground, gagging. As his trachea had been cut open, he could only look at Zen with his eyes begging for mercy, hoping that Zen would give him a pill just like the one he had given to Tristan and save his life. Zen stepped forward and looked at Gray's fat face. It's useless to apologize. Otherwise, why would we ever need weapons? Quote. Chapter 313, Back to the Martial Arts Hall. Yan looked at Gray's fallen body indifferently and without a single trace of sympathy. She immediately followed behind her older brother, Zen. Having left the Luo clan a few years ago, she was not familiar with Gray. Yet, in her opinion, since her older brother killed him, he must not have been a good person. As Tristan passed by Gray, he spat on Gray's face and followed Zen as well. After a while, when Gray's twitching corpse had stilled, a murky vapor left his body and flew toward Zen. It was a malicious aura, the power of curse formed by someone who was unwilling to get killed. The more strength a living creature had, the heavier was the malicious aura formed on his death. An insignificant and weak figure like Gray had a small malicious aura. However, Zen wouldn't reject even such a small amount. The more malicious aura he absorbed, the higher his strength would be. Today, he was to kill all his enemies in the Luo clan with the toughest means possible, which meant using his killing way of practicing. In the olden days, Zen's father, Mike, had been much too good to his brothers out of a feeling of benevolence. Eventually, his two younger brothers, Bryson and Ken, murdered him. Although Mike had been soft-hearted and responded to evil with kindness, in the end, he still suffered the fatal disaster of getting killed. Zen had long decided never to follow his father's path. Stepping into the Luo house, they saw the wide muster station. When Zen left Luo clan, he was forced to fight his younger cousin Andrew at the muster station while desperately seeking to stay alive. Yet, at the end of the fight, even when he beat Andrew, his uncle Ken didn't keep his promise that he would allow Zen to leave the Luo residence. The noise outside the front door had attracted the attention of the people in the house. Yet, since they were at a distance, they did not hear the conversation between Zen and Gray. They never suspected that outside the door were Zen and Yan, the two descendants who had left Luo house long time back. In any case, killing someone on the front doors of the Luo house was a mighty offense. Who are you? How dare you kill our steward? Someone roared in anger. A couple of them drew their swords, pointing them at Zen and his companions. Who are they? Zen asked Tristan, who stood behind him, in an indifferent tone. Group of thugs hired by Gray. Some family members of the Luo clan protested because they were not satisfied with the family asset arrangement. So, Gray hired these people to threaten those members, Tristan explained quickly. Indeed, Zen said simply, nodding. The streamer sword Zen held glistened with a cold, silver flash of light. Whichever way he wielded the sword, this cold light flashed, splashing blood. Zen killed the thugs with no second thought. The strength of each thug lay in simple flesh refining or bone refining level. They didn't have the slightest advantage in front of Zen, and their skills offered them no resistance. Plop, plop, one by one, the thugs collapsed in a pool of blood. Not far away from the scene, some descendants of the Luo clan watched Zen in horror. They wondered who sent this malefic killer. Was this the end of the Luo clan? Desperate and eager to escape, they still did not dare make noise in fear of attracting Zen's attention. Their legs felt like lead, so heavy that they were unable to move a single step. The terrible thought that it was the last day of the entire Luo clan flashed in their minds. They would get killed on the hands of this madman. Horror filled their insides slowly even as they fumbled, thinking on a plan of escape. But why was Tristan following this man and woman? Had he brought them here? Did he accompany the killer? The thought struck them unbidden. It was entirely possible that Tristan was an accomplice, judging from the way he stood close behind the killer. Just as the descendants worried about their fate, wondering who Zen was, Tristan announced in a firm voice, "Do not panic, my fellow members of the Luo clan. He is Zen, our young master. As a matter of fact, he is the true master of our clan now." Immediately, the crowd grew noisy, lost in a buzz of excitement. Zen, a member cried out in amazement. He's Zen, a second member repeated, startled. Zen, a third member yelled, sounding thrilled and happy. Despite the change in Zen's temperament, they seemed to immediately recognize the young boy in him now that they were told his name. Like an old and long-lost friend that they hadn't seen in some time, Zen was in their faintest memories. Somehow, they couldn't remember him until his name came up, and then, the rich recollection surged up in an instant. Of course, he is Zen. Another one of them recognized Zen, confirming this out loud. Yes, he is our young master. No, he is the master of our clan now. He's the son of our former master, Mike. The eldest son of the eldest branch of the Luo clan. Since Mike passed away, the leadership should pass down to Zen. He must become the new master of our clan. The members of Luo clan were astonished but thrilled to have Zen back. Moments before, they had been nervous and horrified, but now, their moods elevated from terror to joy. Zen was back, and he had such great power. The Luo clan was not to be destroyed. In fact, it was to be saved by Zen. The Luo clan was slowly being ruined since Bryson, the current master of the Luo clan, allowed those thugs to run amok inside the house. But they were still members of the Luo clan, and none of them wanted to see their own family wasting away. It was the reason they did not want to leave the Luo clan. They were born and brought up in this clan, which meant that their roots belonged here. Even if the roots were rotten to the core, they were still reluctant to leave. Yet, they could do nothing but swallow the pain as they watched the Luo clan grow decadent slowly, crumbling away ceaselessly only to eventually be destroyed. But at this very moment, they understood. They understood that Zen came back to bring light and hope to the Luo clan. Thanks to him, the clan would be saved. The members rushed over to Zen one by one, gathering around him in a circle. Many of them had tears in their eyes that threatened to spill over. They were much moved by Zen's arrival, for it brought hope for their family. It was hard to express this appreciation in proper words. They were truly touched. "Hey, you guys, you welcome my older brother but forget about me?" asked Yan from behind them. Her eyes blinked and her lips turned down in a pout. "Brother," one of the members heard Yan's words and had a close look at her. "My goodness, it's Yan. Yan is back, too." Someone yelled loudly. "What, didn't Perrin tell us that Yan was locked up mountain?" They didn't have comprehensive knowledge about Mountain, only that it was a place that held complete misery, the place any disciple of Cloud sect who violated the rules was thrown into to suffer endless torture and inhuman treatment. Once, Yan had been the best descendant of the Luo clan. She had been admitted to Cloud sect especially because of her great talent in the martial arts. It had been a proud moment for every member of the Luo clan. Later, they heard that Yan was punished and imprisoned at Mountain. No one received any information about her ever since. They still didn't know what happened to her in all those years. Now, to their amazement, Yan was back. And Yan's strength seemed profound, too great to be detected by them. How strong was she now? It seemed that the momentum exuding from her body was a million times stronger than Bryson's. Zen was at the third grade of the nature level and was restraining his real momentum. The descendants then thought that Zen's strength was comparable to Bryson's. It might even be slightly better than his, but not much more. Of course, they still felt that Zen's strength was sufficient enough for him to take over the master's position of the family even at such a young age. Meanwhile, they sensed that Yan's strength was far stranger from theirs. Seemingly, she had stepped into the level of the illuminating soul realm. The life vitality inside her body felt much more delicate and the momentum she emitted was simply impossible for them to ascertain. Bryson paled in comparison to her strength. He was at a much lower level and far weaker than Yan. Although Yan's actual strength was comparable to Zen's, even a little bit poorer than his, the members of the Luo clan concluded that she was much stronger. The little girl who used to run around in the yard of the Luo house all day long had now become a girl with such formidable power. It was incredible. Keep walking, Zen interrupted simply. Armed with his streamer sword, Zen shuffled forward inside the Luo house, followed by his companions. Those who dared to resist him, show hostility, or were identified as enemies of the Luo clan were to be killed by Zen instantly without demur. Any member of the Luo clan who was willing to side with Zen followed behind him. Some members from the other branches of the Luo clan too tagged along. After all, they were all members of the same family. They were supposed to be each other's flesh and blood, to stick together through thick and thin. Zen intended to rid the Luo clan of the unpleasant sores that plagued it through cruel means, and if any of the members showed signs of genuine repentance, Zen would allow himself to forgive them initially and spare their lives. Yet, after he was through sorting out the affairs of the family and putting it in the right order, he would still punish those who had bad behaviors, as per the rules of the family. The further they walked, the larger the number of people who joined Zen's entourage became, and the greater momentum the group had. Unwittingly, Zen led his team members to the doors of the martial arts hall. Seeing the hall where he had been punched and tortured for 2 whole years, all sorts of emotions welled up in Zen. At the moment, many children were exercising martial arts inside the hall. How did they exercise? They threw punches after punches at the men before them, most of whom were prisoners sentenced to death but bought by the Luo clan at high costs. The prisoners were tied up and unable to resist, most of them on their last breaths thanks to the continuous blows. Yet, a small number of them were not condemned as prisoners. Such was the case with Melvin, who was a member of the Luo clan. At this very moment, wearing a piece of leather armor to protect himself from getting punched too hard and dying, he was handcuffed and shackled while being beaten violently, punch after the next punch. Melvin was born with superhuman strength, and although he was the son of a concubine, he had good talent. He had punched Zen back during his training. Later, after Zen hit Gray, he had approved of Zen's behavior. In Zen's view, he was one of the members of the Luo clan who were both courageous and honorable. But according to the current state of affairs, his courage and uprightness meant that he was bound to offend an increasing number of people. As a result, he ended up being framed by vile characters, punished, locked in the dungeon and turned into a training tool. The person who was punching Melvin was Miles, the son of the second branch of the Luo clan. He was also Perrin's younger brother. Since Perrin's rank as the young master of the Luo clan was now abolished, the title was naturally taken up by Miles. A young man in a yellow robe stood next to Melvin. "Little rat, I see you're quite enjoying yourself," he said. "This looks very interesting. Let me try too, would you?" "Well, Darcy, if you so want to," Miles said, a wide smile on his face. "Go ahead. But if I throw a punch at him, I'm afraid he'll die." "What should I do?" asked the man named Darcy. "Darcy, there is nothing to be afraid of. These training tools are just that, tools. Nobody cares if they die. Rest assured and punch him as you wish. Even if they die, nobody will trouble you." "Ha ha," Miles said to him, smiling courteously while he threw a contemptuous glance at Melvin. Melvin, all battered and abused, burst out with a heavy face, "Miles. Even if I, Melvin, am the training tool, it's only for the purpose of training the members of the Luo clan. He is an outsider. What allows him to punch me?" Chapter 314, Not Interested to Know You. At that time, Melvin had the exact same idea as Zen in the past. "I have broken the rules of the Luo clan, so I was downgraded to a slave. I serve as a training tool, and it is my destiny. As a training tool, the children of the Luo clan beat me for training or testing their strength. But there is someone who cannot beat me, Melvin thought. When he heard Melvin's words, Miles hit the slave with a powerful blow before shouting, "Melvin, you're honored to be beaten by Darcy. If you say anything more, I will beat you to death." The blow had Melvin doubling over. But he was also a hothead. Through gritted teeth, he shouted back, "Miles Luo. You have humiliated the entire Luo clan. You're even worse than your brother Perrin." The people Perrin had good relations with were the great ones from the noble clans of the imperial capital. "Who is your brother Darcy?" "He is only a man from the Huang clan of Sea County. The Huang clan is low-ranked, and people from that clan have not been given the right to talk to members of the Luo clan. And now you're kissing his rear." "Bah," Melvin smirked. His remarks caught Darcy's attention. "Our Huang clan is so low and not qualified to talk to your Luo clan." This time, Darcy's expression turned cold. Seeing Darcy's face, Miles hurriedly gave a smile and bent over. "Darcy, do not mind this guy. He just had to say something. I will punish him harshly later," he assured. It was necessary for Miles to speak to Darcy carefully. "No, let me do it. I'll teach him what unqualified means." As soon as he finished saying this, Darcy started to focus his life energy and soon reached a high spirit. Darcy Huang was the young master of the Huang clan, which had developed quickly in the past years in Sea County. But no one knew where the master of the Huang clan found resources that allowed him to achieve 3 levels continuously. Now, he was at the 5th grade of the nature level. The master of the Huang clan was probably the fighter with the highest level in Sea County. Given the circumstances, the Huang clan was naturally flourishing gradually, and other clans had to admit them to be the #1 clan and play up to them. As a result, the Huang clan stood to receive most of the benefits in the county. And most of them belonged to the Luo clan. In other words, the Luo clan's wealth had been swallowed up by other clans in Sea County, and the Huang clan had amassed it. Despite the situation, the Luo clan would never dare say anything unfavorable. And this was the reason why Miles had to flatter Darcy. The moment he antagonized Darcy, the Huang clan would be annoyed, and the ending would be worse for the Luo clan. And because Miles was good at pleasing Darcy, and building a good relationship with him, the Huang clan didn't eat up all of the Luo clan's property. However, this just prolonged the agony of the Luo clan, because they were on the way to decline soon. In Darcy's view, the Luo clan was a bunch of deplorable people, including Miles. But since Miles always said something to please him tremendously, Darcy didn't mind being followed around by him. Now all of a sudden, a human punchbag had the nerve to look down on the Huang clan. Did he really want to die? Out of all the big clans inside Sea County, who would dare say anything bad to his face? Certainly not the destitute Luo clan, or so he thought. With Darcy focusing his strength, his life energy became more powerful and could hit Melvin with enough force to take him down. And Darcy's potential power did not go unnoticed by Melvin, whose face turned pale. He knew that Darcy hitting him on the body could mean his death. But while this was the case, Melvin refused to humble himself. Gritting his teeth, he vowed not to beg for mercy. He was aware begging would never work on someone like Darcy. So Melvin would rather not humiliate himself before dying. With his innate superhuman strength and exceptionally strong form, Melvin still held on to slim hope that he could withstand the onslaught of punches Darcy would surely give him. He leaned back slightly, so his chest appeared somewhat inclined. The posture would help diminish the power of Darcy's blow, which he would surely deliver at full strength. With a mocking smile, Darcy roared, "Nothing you do can save you. You're only an ant to me. I will have to die if I can't beat you to death." He already had a killing intent. "Heartbroken fist," he hollered. A shiver ran down Melvin's spine. That meant the power of the punch Darcy would unleash would be equivalent to that of 5 horses. If the blow landed on Melvin's body, he would feel like being smashed by 5 horses. "You go die," Darcy screamed. Ugly laughter followed, although his expression was fierce. Despair had Melvin's face turning pale. He was suddenly afraid that he could not bear the onslaught of power this time. But just as Darcy's fist was about to land on Melvin's body, a shiny silver object rushed towards Darcy. If he continued to punch, his arm would be cut off. Stunned by the attack that came out of the blue, Darcy pulled back his fist while gritting his teeth in anger. With a hateful expression, he turned around to withdraw the energy he was about to throw off. "Who was that? Who dared to attack me just now?" Darcy thundered. Both Zen and Yan looked at Darcy coldly without speaking, as though talking to him was so disgusting. It was at that moment that Tristan spoke loudly to the other members of the Luo clan. Everybody, stop for a moment. Please get ready to follow us. Waiting to see who would follow, Miles smirked. Then with a cold smile, he turned to speak. Tristan Luo, who do you think you are? What makes you think you can speak here, huh? There was heavy silence. Tristan was a member of an insignificant branch of the Luo clan. He didn't have a significant position at all. As Miles expected, he could start throwing threat that would frighten Tristan enough to make him stop. But Miles' remarks annoyed Tristan, who retorted, "You are Miles Luo, right? And who do you think you are?" It was satisfying to see the stunned look in Miles' face. "You," Miles blustered. Now extremely confused, Miles thought, is Tristan crazy? How dare he say that? How dare he talk back to me? He must have someone to back him up, Miles kept thinking. All of a sudden, he found several members of the Luo clan had gathered there, following a young man and a young woman. "Are you launching a rebellion? Aren't you afraid of breaking the rules of the clan and you'll end up either imprisoned or even becoming human punch bags?" he asked. The group laughed loudly after Miles finished talking. Then Tristan spoke out aloud, "Rebel. Ha, ha, ha. The new master of the Luo clan is here. So, Miles Luo, you are the one who's rebelling." Stunned, Miles repeated, "The new master." He looked at Zen from head to toe, then smiling coldly, said, "Do you think you can find someone else to help you and this one can be the master?" "That's ridiculous," he scoffed, then laughed. "How childish you all are. When my father comes out, all of you will have to die," he threatened. He now sounded crazy. "Someone else?" Tristan asked before pointing to Zen. "He's not just anyone," he said with a shake of his head. "He is the new master of the Luo clan, Zen Luo." It was with great pride that he said Zen's name. Zen Luo. Miles repeated the name without realizing he did so. The name sent a shiver up his spine. He couldn't believe his ears. Meanwhile, the men at the martial arts hall were unaware of what was happening. Tristan's behavior had confused them. In their eyes, even if the Luo clan was declining, they were not willing to have someone else take over the master position of the clan. But this man wasn't just anyone. He was Zen Luo, the son of the former master of the clan. Hearing the name, the men immediately recognized Zen. Now they understood why so many members of the clan were following the young man. "Zen Luo," Miles murmured incredulously. "Is he really back?" He asked the question in his mind. A smile of surprise lit up Melvin's face. Is that man truly Zen? He continued to wonder. He had never stopped thinking about Zen, wondering if he was still alive. All they knew was that Zen was abducted, but no one witnessed him die, or found his dead body. Although he had selected Zen to be his punchbag long time ago, Melvin still thought highly of the former young master of the clan and was awed by his great courage. And Melvin thought it would have been a pity if that man with great courage would end up dead. "Zen, I can't believe you came back," Melvin murmured. Suddenly, the strong man's eyes welled up with tears, and his nose started to sniffle. In view of several astonished men, Zen slowly walked up to Melvin and said, "Long time no see, Melvin. How did you end up being a human punchbag?" He looked at the older man waiting for an answer. "That's a very long story," Melvin sighed. "Then tell your story later. Let's talk about what's happening now. I saw someone wanted to beat you to death. Is that true?" Looking in the direction where Darcy stood, Zen asked Melvin, "Is that the guy?" He approached with full confidence and swung his sword. With Zen nearly cutting his arm, Darcy became even more furious. "Is this guy going to bring me trouble? How dare he do that? Doesn't he know who I am? He's really dancing with death." Darcy thought bitterly. "I am the man who wants to beat him to death. What do you want to do about it?" He sneered. He asked again, "Do you know who I am?" Raising an eyebrow, he waited for acknowledgement. But Zen just shook his head and replied, "I really don't." Zen moved his fingers and his sword started to quiver. "I am," but Darcy was rudely interrupted. Swish, swish. Before he could finish talking, Zen's streamer sword shifted. The action was so fast like a shiny flower flitted by and slashed Darcy's neck. I am, Darcy gasped. With his eyes opened wide, Darcy found he could no longer speak. In the dying seconds of his life, he was as confused as he was regretful. "Why didn't you let me finish what I was saying? If you knew who I am, you would certainly not dare to kill me. What a pity I'm about to die. My father will take revenge for me." This was Darcy's last clear thought. Looking at Darcy's wide-open eyes before his last breath, Zen shook his head calmly before saying, I'm not interested to know who you are. Chapter 315, The Blood Prisoner. The first time Miles laid eyes on Zen, he had been too shocked to react. In his head, he kept thinking over and over, why did this guy come back? But what happened next stunned him more, that was Darcy's unexpected death in Zen's hands. How could Darcy have died this way? Was Zen crazy? Darcy was the young master of the Huang clan. Would the Huang clan let this pass without retribution given the way he was killed? Darcy died on the Luo clan's territory, and it only meant catastrophe for the Luo family. Trembling, Miles asked, Zen, do you know who you killed? He felt terrible after witnessing Darcy's death. Shaking his head, Zen replied, I already answered that, didn't I? I am not in the mood to know. I don't care about your mood. Darcy is the young master of the Huang clan. Are you aware of this clan? The master of Huang clan, the most powerful clan in C County now, is at grade 5 of the nature level. Darcy died here. All the members of the Luo family will be killed. No longer able to control his fear, Miles howled. When the others heard this, they all had a worried expression. A fighter at grade 5 of the nature level would definitely be considered a powerful man in C County. Was Zen qualified to resist the Huang clan? Glancing at Miles with indifference, Zen snapped. Shut up, otherwise, you might end up dead, too. The look Zen gave him made Miles tremble even more, as if a viper was staring at him. But he gritted his teeth and retorted, if you dare to kill me, my dad. How can my dad just let you go? Miles asked weakly. So, if I don't kill you, will Bryson let me go? Zen sneered. He was slightly enjoying this. Right, you're back this time to court death. Trying to sound brave, Miles thought of his father and felt relieved. Bryson had greatly improved his strength, broken the pass of marrow refining realm, and reached grade 3 of the nature level. Court death. Me, Zen laughed. He looked at the pavilion beside the martial arts practicing field and then trod on the wall with one foot. Then he jumped up like a civet cat and instantly climbed to the top of the pavilion. From there, he could look down at tier upon tier of buildings within the Luo mansion. It took many years for the Luo family to arrange the buildings, as well as fix the courtyards and pavilions in the mansion, so they turned out exquisite and well-designed, like gardens in foreign lands. Zen muttered to himself, in the eyes of the noble clans in imperial capital, these houses are hardly worth mentioning. But my family has been managed well from generation to generation. I will not allow Bryson to destroy these. Breathing deeply after minutes of introspection, Zen shouted as he summoned his life vitality. Brothers of the Luo family, listen to my orders. Here is Zen. I am back. All the members of the Luo family, whether young or old, regardless if you are direct or collateral descendants, everyone with the family name Luo, come to gather in the martial arts practicing field. And this is a special call to Bryson and Ken, 2 mongrels. Come out to suffer death. Zen declared. His voice was loud and clear, which was due to that he summoned the life vitality, to help spread his voice far away and even down below. Those in the lower basement heard him distinctly as if the voice was right beside their ears. Zen. Zen Luo, Zen. A lot of people kept saying his name. Zen is back. Is Zen coming back? There were whispers of excitement. Every member of the Luo family in every part of the mansion heard his voice and became excited. They didn't know what happened, or why Zen decided to return, but since he was back and dared to come to the mansion, it meant a lot to them. At least, Zen didn't fear Bryson. In a pavilion beside a pond, Perrin sat on a wheelchair and stared at the ripples without expression. Although the pond and the scenery around it were beautiful, he was in no mood to appreciate them. A disabled warrior was like an ordinary person losing an arm or a leg. His lifelong pursuit and faith was gone. After being disabled by Zen in their fight on Hell Mountain, Perrin lost his value before the Wang clan. The truth was, Perrin was born to an impoverished family and had no right to claim ties of kinship with the Wang clan. Perrin might have been somebody in C County, but in the imperial capital, he was only a nobody from a humble background. Billy could make friends with Perrin because of Yan. The reason for this was that at Cloud Sect, Perrin was the only one related to Yan by blood at that time. However, when Zen appeared in Hell Mountain, Billy and Vale knew that Zen was Yan's older brother. The truth was, even if Zen didn't incapacitate Perrin on Hell Mountain that day, the Wang clan would still have abandoned him since he was no longer of use to them. So after Perrin was carried away that day, the Wang clan just sent several people to take him back to C County and even threw him at the gate of the county like a piece of junk. And since coming back home, he had never once felt happy but always seemed to be very anxious. What if Zen came back to kill him someday? By parents' estimation, Zen would be back in 3 to 5 years. As long as he didn't perish from an accident, he would return home sooner or later. The day Zen came back would be the day he would run out of luck, and his father Bryson, as well as Uncle Ken, would also face misfortune. However, he didn't think that day would come so soon. When Zen spoke in his deep voice, it was like thunder from a blue sky that burst in his ears. And Perrin's already pale face turned ashen. Why is he back so soon? The disgraced fighter murmured. He tried to think of a good reason, but failed. And unfortunately, there was no one to answer his question. Only 2 kingfishers quickly flew past the pond, causing ripples that spread slowly. In the innermost hall of the mansion, Bryson was cultivating with his eyes closed. What made him different from the other members of the Luo family was that everything he knew about Zen came from Perrin, so he was also worried about the same things as the disabled warrior. One thing Bryson knew was the Cloud sect accepting Zen as a disciple. But he was unclear about Zen's progress later and what happened at the All Peaks competition recently. He's back after only 1 year, Bryson whispered. The timing was worrisome. Once he learned that Zen entered Cloud sect, Bryson had a deep crisis awareness. Under a crisis awareness pressure, he cultivated day and night and broke the bottleneck by accident, thus reaching grade 3 of the nature level unexpectedly. It was a miracle for someone who was over 50 years old. So what if you've become an outstanding talent after only 1 year? I have also made great progress. Now, I have reached grade 3 of the nature level. If you had been patient and cultivated at the Cloud sect for 10 years, I would probably be scared of you. But after only 1 year, are you sure you can be a worthy opponent for me? And even if you are my opponent, how can you be sure that he will also see you as his opponent? He kept talking to himself while looking out the hall's window. But a squeaking sound alerted him. All of a sudden, the wooden door of the hall was opened. Bryson, Zen is back. There was panic in Ken's voice as he made the announcement. Glaring at his brother, he snapped, I have ears. How could I not have heard such a loud voice? What should we do? Ken asked with a hint of desperation. He kept pacing back and forth. What should we do? What can we do? What other choice do we have but to risk our lives? Release that person. We have done him a huge favor, and now it's time for him to repay us. Bryson said. Shortly after, Bryson stood up and looked towards the direction of Zen's voice. He stretched out his hand and his life vitality appeared. 13 treasured swords hanging on the wall were suddenly unsheathed and floated behind him. Then Bryson headed to the martial arts hall. Staring at Bryson's retreating, Ken gritted his teeth, and ran in the opposite direction. He headed towards a cellar in Luo Mansion. This was a special cellar, and nobody knew about it except Ken and Bryson. Entering the deep cellar, Ken unlocked a door with 2 keys. When he pushed the door open, the strong metallic smell of blood from inside assailed his senses. A hoarse voice from the inside called out. Who is it? It's Ken. Do you come to meet me because of that bloke? Hoarse laughter followed. Because of life vitality, Zen's voice was able to penetrate even the deepest parts of the mansion. So that person inside the room obviously heard him. He also heard Zen call Ken and Bryson mongrels and decided he must hold a grudge against the two. Yes, Mr. Blood Prisoner. We're asking you to do us a favor. It was humiliating to beg, but Ken had to do it. There was laughter again. That bloke's voice is full of strength. You're coming to me because you can't handle him, can you? He must be very powerful. Do you take me for a fool? The Blood Prisoner laughed a 3rd time. But Ken persisted. Mr. Blood Prisoner, we have offered you much blood and flesh in the last several days, and we let you eat at least 10 living people. If we can't defeat that bloke, then most likely no one will help you collect the blood and flesh of living people in the future. And for sure, Zen will find you. If you are exposed. He was grasping at straws. Are you threatening me? I can help you once. And in return, you need to find 100 living people within 1 month for me to suck their blood and eat their flesh. He said. That was his condition. 100 living people. Hesitation mixed with desperation showed on Ken's face. There were many people in C County, but it was impossible not to be noticed if 100 living humans disappeared for no reason. And it would surely mean trouble for the Luo family. Just forget it. If you can't do it, I will simply go somewhere else. The cold voice spurred Ken to action. I can bring it to you, Mr. Blood Prisoner. I will do as you say. Nodding, Ken bowed and prepared to leave. Ha ha ha, that's great. I will also suck this bloke's blood and eat his flesh. With that said, the blood prisoner walked out of the cellar leaving a trail of metallic odor behind. Chapter 316. All the people stood up. The man Ken Luo called the blood prisoner had appeared in C County and its neighborhoods. He had cultivated himself by a demonic method of eating the blood and flesh of living humans. There had been many people from the counties who went missing in the recent years. The missing people weren't noticed at first, until one day someone had accidentally entered the blood prisoner's cave. He found tons of human bones and soon enough, the truth was revealed to the public. After the case was reported to the superior level, Burning Sky Empire sent some professionals to arrest the blood prisoner. The Cloud sect also offered a reward to anyone who would capture him, so many elite disciples participated in the search after they had accepted the task. Although the blood prisoner was quite strong, he didn't stand against so many high-level people. Therefore he was badly hurt and escaped to any place he could find. Meanwhile, Perrin Luo was just dismissed by the Cloud sect and sent back to the Luo clan. He told Bryson Luo that Zen had a great leap in progress and had already entered the Cloud sect. When Bryson knew that Zen was still alive and had been a disciple of the Cloud sect, he suffered a serious illness. He and Zen were sworn enemies. The Cloud sect seemed to be the perfect place to cultivate a warrior. When Zen reached a high level after 5 or 10 years, he would surely come back. What would Bryson do when that time came? He felt greatly pressured. Whenever he thought about Zen, he couldn't fall asleep for the whole night. Thus, after Bryson recovered, he continuously improved his strength because of the pressure he felt. Not only did he become a nature creature, but he also reached as high as the 3rd level. It was known that as a warrior grew older, his bones would toughen and it would be harder for him to improve greatly. The fact that Bryson's achievement of such a high level was all because of Zen. But even though Bryson achieved such a feat, he didn't feel satisfied. The Cloud sect was too strong, as seen from Perrin's experience. Perrin improved greatly and had grown into a nature creature in a short time because he got a little help from one of the noble clans, the Wong clan. If Zen had enough time to grow, Bryson still wouldn't be able to defeat him. When Bryson was at a loss on what to do, he met up with the blood prisoner, who was on the run from government arrest. The blood prisoner was undoubtedly powerful. He had to escape to random places because of his injuries. In the end, he hid himself in the cellar of the Luo clan. Bryson hadn't found the blood prisoner in the cellar at first as he was really good at hiding himself. However, after several people were reported missing, Bryson realized that something was up. Now, the news about the blood prisoner had become sensational. Soon enough, Bryson deduced that the blood prisoner had hidden in the Luo clan. However, he didn't try to arrest the blood prisoner as the others did. Instead, he covered the truth about the missing people, and now only he and Ken in the Luo clan knew the truth. Ken didn't report the facts to the local government. He found the blood prisoner by himself and offered to help the prisoner. Not only would he help the blood prisoner, but also give the blood prisoner living people to eat. Those servants and members that had doubts about the missing people in Luo clan were sent to the blood prisoner by Ken himself. For a long time after that, Bryson occasionally abducted 1 or 2 men and threw them in the blood prisoner's cell. They helped the blood prisoner regain his strength by offering live people he could eat. At first, Bryson gave the blood prisoner the slaves, the death row. Later on, there weren't enough slaves anymore, so Bryson and Ken looked for people from the outside and abducted them. That was also why Melvin became a human punchbag, because there were fewer slaves left in the Luo clan. The reason Bryson chose to do those was mainly because of Zen. He thought that Zen would come back sooner or later. If he kept the blood prisoner in the Luo clan, he felt that the blood prisoner would surely defeat Zen. However, he didn't expect that Zen would come back so soon. It had been only a year since Zen left. Even though Zen could improve himself considerably, how strong could he be in such a short time? Thus, Bryson thought that he could defeat Zen by himself since he was also strong enough now. But just to be sure, he still asked Ken to tell the blood prisoner that Zen had shown up. The blood prisoner hadn't completely recovered yet as his current strength was only 70% of his best, so there was a huge difference. After all, Bryson didn't have any magic pills for him and only offered him some live people. However, the current blood prisoner must be strong enough to defeat Zen, Bryson thought. He then went out of his room and jumped on the roofs of the Luo clan property like a dragonfly that skimmed on the water's surface. He rushed quickly towards the martial arts hall. When he entered the martial arts hall, he saw that the members of Luo clan were gathered around Zen. More members were still coming and joined them as well. Most of them were young ones from the 4th and 5th branches, but there were also many members from the 2nd and 3rd branches. Meanwhile, Zen stood in the center. He was dressed in a cyan gown and had a gleaming sword in his hand. Zen Luo, Bryson shouted, you unfilial child who betrayed the Luo clan. You actually have the guts to come back. Bryson wanted to steal the spotlight first, so he yelled arrogantly. Then at the same time, he took out his 13 swords. The swords were covered by purple life vitality and glimmered a violet hue. The Luo clan is my home. Why won't I come back? Zen said and looked up. There were no signs of fear on his calm face. The members of Luo clan had been oppressed by Bryson for a long time, so all of them chose to side with Zen and regarded him as the new master. However, they were still nervous in the face of a high spirit like Bryson's. Bryson had been the master of the Luo clan for many years and had imposed his authority on the young people for a long time. Although the members were confident in Zen, they were still worried. If Bryson defeated Zen, they could only imagine what he would do to them. Therefore, many members moved away from Zen a bit under the pressure of Bryson's presence. This way, at least they would have a mutual position if Zen failed. Zen is the new master of the Luo clan. Why can't he come back? Tristan exclaimed. When Melvin heard him, he also felt emboldened to say something. That's right, Zen is Mike Luo's son. It is natural that the son should inherit his father's position. Why can't Zen come back? He said. Then he added, but you, Bryson Luo, you did drastic things and made Luo clan decline. You are actually the unfilial child of the Luo clan. He declared lastly. The other members began to shout together too. Those who had hesitated just now changed their minds and soon joined the group to shout as well. During his reign, Bryson allowed some people to commit violations, including Gray. They were also unfair in distributing resources. Thus, many of them did not want to support Bryson anymore. When Bryson saw how the young members acted, he coldly said, do you all want to betray the Luo clan? We are not betraying the Luo clan. We are betraying you, Bryson Luo. The Luo clan does not belong to you alone. It belongs to all of us. But you're different, Bryson. You think that you own it. Tristan shouted back. Go to perdition, Bryson exclaimed in rage. At this point, Bryson had snapped. His eyes glinted with killing intent and one of his 13 swords shot towards Tristan at once. The members felt nervous when they saw what Bryson had done. After all, none of them could fight against him. The sword was so quick that before anyone could do something, it arrived in front of Tristan. Ping, ping, 2 sharp sounds followed and the sword was cut into pieces. Zen waved his streamer sword and looked up at Bryson. Is that how you treat the people of the Luo clan? In your eyes, they should be at your mercy. You can do whatever you want to them. Is there any difference between your family member and an animal in your eyes? He asked icily. Zen is right. Once I did something that didn't please you, you wanted to kill me. What do you think we are? Bryson, we have the same family name and we are related. Do you still remember that? Tristan asked as well. He felt that he had nothing to lose now, but what he could do was to believe Zen and trust Zen's strength. Just now, he was right. Zen could protect him from Bryson's attacks. Thus, Tristan said those words fearlessly. He was a young man with low status, but he actually blamed Bryson face to face. This was beyond his imagination until Zen came. Bryson didn't respond to Tristan, but he stared at the steamer sword in Zen's hand. The 13 swords were all middle-grade mysterious weapons. It had cost Bryson a lot and a long time just to own the 13 swords. However, Zen's sword had cut one of his 13 swords in a mere second. Zen's gleaming sword immediately caught his attention. It sliced my weapon so easily as if it has cut a vegetable. What level is that sword? Is it a top-grade mysterious weapon? Or is it a low-grade spiritual weapon? A middle-grade spiritual weapon, perhaps. Bryson could not help but wonder. However, Bryson had never expected that Zen's sword was a fairy weapon. He had never imagined it. Moreover, he had never seen a top-grade spiritual weapon in his life, not to mention a fairy weapon. Chapter 317. The expectations of the general public. It was rare to see a low-level spiritual weapon in C County. In the past, when Mike owned a high-level spiritual weapon, he stood out in the whole of C County and became the envy of numerous people at that time. But time had changed. As several large-scale mines were discovered and exploited in C County, warriors became richer. Now, a few spiritual weapons were seen in C County. The master of the Huang clan was the one who prospered most rapidly with the thriving mining business. He was so wealthy that he could even afford a middle-level spiritual weapon. Living in Sea County, Bryson's knowledge was limited to spiritual weapons. On the other hand, when it came to fairy weapons, Bryson thought that they were legends. As Bryson gawked at Zen's sword, Zen said in a cold voice, "Bryson, did you hear that? That is how the junior members of the clan see you in their hearts. As the master of the clan, you have proved to be a complete failure." Bryson smiled mirthlessly. The 12 long swords behind him began to tremble. "How dare you say I'm a failure? These children are only trying to cause trouble. Do you think a child's lie can oust me? Do any older members support you?" As soon as Bryson finished speaking, 3 middle-aged men walked into the martial arts hall, followed by a dozen children of the clan. "We support Zen," the middle-aged man who led the team said. "Bryson, you have gone too far in these past few years," another middle-aged man added. The 3 middle-aged men were Zen's uncles. After they heard Zen's accusations, many of which implicated Bryson, they gathered the clan's children and rushed to the hall. "Cletus, Hodge, and Chet, you want to rebel against the Luo clan?" Bryson's face darkened as if a rainstorm were looming. He knew that if elders in the clan stepped forward, then the matter would grow more serious. Zen's uncles were the heads of the other branches of the Luo clan. As long as they chose to rebel, the members belonging to their branches would also follow them. "Bryson, we're rebelling against you, not the Luo clan," Cletus Luo said. They had long been dissatisfied with Bryson's and Ken's actions in the clan. However, what had prevented them from revolting was their concern that no one else was eligible enough to serve as the new leader. And, most importantly, no one dared to be the first to rebel against Bryson. None of the clan branches felt as though they were strong enough to lead this coup. They were also aware that Bryson would slaughter the first person to rebel. All they needed was an opportunity. Once Zen returned, the older members felt that he was trustworthy. So they chose to back Zen unanimously. Bryson sighed when he heard Cletus Luo. He sneered, "Okay, so this is how it is. If a wall starts tottering, everyone wants to shove it. But I tell you, you will all regret it." At this time, they heard the sounds of a walking stick hitting the floor. The noise was coming from the gate of the martial arts hall. The clicking sound neared. A gray-haired aged man ambled toward the hall with the help of 2 servants. In his hand, he held a crutch. The man was about 90 and on the verge of senility. With great effort, the old man finally managed to reach the gate of the hall. He paused a while to take a breath before speaking in a hoarse voice, "Bryson, we will not regret our decision." The old man was a senior member of the clan. He was one of the few remaining members from the last generation and enjoyed high respect. He was Mike's grandfather. In terms of relationships, the old man would be Zen's great-grandfather, Bridger. "Grandfather, you also came. Great-grandfather has come here. He can't walk. How did he make it?" Great-grandfather also supports Zen. "Today, we will unite and topple Bryson." The children of the Luo clan were in an uproar. Bridger seldom appeared in public because of his senility. However, his seldom appearances couldn't change the fact that he was the oldest living man with the highest seniority in the Luo clan. Despite the fact that he could barely walk, nobody dared to ignore him. After all, sometimes, seniority overweighed strength when it came to matters pertaining to the clan. "Grandfather, you," Bryson was speechless. "My grandfather, who has 1 foot in the grave, also came to make trouble for me. Is there anyone in the Luo clan who will show any support for me?" "Huh, it is all because of Zen. You all just took the opportunity to stir trouble because Zen returned. Just wait and see how I slice Zen into pieces later. Then I'll see what you have to say." As the thought coursed through Bryson's mind, he felt more hatred for Zen. Zen walked through the crowd and stopped by Bridger's side. He bowed and said, "Great-grandfather." Bridger reached out with a trembling hand and said with his hoarse voice, "Zen, the Luo clan is now at a dead end. The mongrel who stands up there is the cause of our misery. We feel very sorry for what was done to you and your father. The Luo clan disappointed you. Now, you are the only one who can save the Luo clan." Zen nodded and said, "Great-grandfather, I know. That's why I came back." The truth was that Zen had returned not because he wanted to take something from the Luo clan. In fact, he was wealthier than anyone else standing in the hall. The streamer's sword, for example, was so expensive that even if all the assets in the Luo clan were sold, they wouldn't be able to buy 1/10 of the sword. But the Luo clan was Zen's family. It was the place where he grew up. He had the same blood as the other members of the clan. After he finished speaking, Zen jumped onto the roof. He gazed at Bryson coldly and said, "Bryson, did you hear that? Now you know what the clan members think. Who is the legitimate heir of the clan? What is the aspiration of all the people in the clan?" Zen roared, "I am the direct descendant of the clan, and I'm the legitimate heir. This is the expectation of the general public, and this is the aspiration of all the people. You, Bryson, you killed the eldest son of the clan and usurped the position of leader of the clan. You went against the trend of the times and let undesirable behavior of troublemakers go unchecked. The wall falls not because everyone is shoving it, but because you do not deserve to be the wall of the Luo clan. A person who commits many injustices is doomed to fail. This outcome suits you well." Zen's rebuke came in a loud voice and with a stern expression. Every word was like a hammer that hit Bryson's heart hard. Zen knew that he was strong enough to crush Bryson. There was no need for him to speak so much. But he didn't plan to kill Bryson like this. Yes, Zen hated Bryson to the core. Bryson had framed and killed Zen's father. He had squandered the family's fortune to satisfy his desires. He had locked Zen in the cellar and treated him like a dog. Such hatred could not be erased with only a hack on his neck. Zen's words hit home. Bryson's face paled, and his expression became sullen. After a short while, Bryson trembled intensively and spat a mouthful of blood. Bryson spat blood. What happened? Zen only said a few words. How could that have made Bryson spit blood? Is he afraid of Zen? Or is it because Zen's criticism distressed him so much? The children of the Luo clan were dumbfounded. Yan stood at the back. She glared at Bryson. While the children were stirred up by Bryson's reaction, Yan remained nonchalant. She was not surprised at all. Everyone practicing the martial arts had a warrior spirit. It represented their belief, likes, dislikes, worldviews, etc. The warrior spirit was, in fact, a kind of belief. The warrior spirit could be very fragile. Warriors had to reinforce their determination to strengthen their warrior spirit continuously. Some warriors would provoke each other at the start of a fight. Some would resort to unfair means to weaken their opponents. They intentionally pointed out their opponents' weakness or ridiculed their strength and derided them. These were all tricks that meant to weaken the enemy's warrior spirit. If anyone's determination in martial arts wavered or cracked, the opponent would seize the chance and defeat him. When Bryson saw Zen and all the people that supported him, Bryson's belief that he was the natural leader of the Luo clan faltered. A crack began to form in his heart which was dedicated to martial arts. And later, Zen denounced him and listed every fault and unfair action. Every word spoken by Zen rang in Bryson's ears. It was loud and clear and hit every nerve. Almost in an instant, Bryson's warrior spirit was breached by Zen. His determination for martial arts began to waver violently. As the sudden bouts of anger and anxiety damaged his heart and mind, Bryson's body was affected. The damage had led to his mouth filling with blood. You spat blood, that shows that you have a bit of humanity left in you. You feel some guilt, but, Zen shook his head and said, it is too late. You have already led the Luo clan into an abyss. I will clean up the mess you have made, but the price will be your life. Ha 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 ha. Bryson suddenly laughed hysterically, almost madly. The roar of laughter continued for a while before it stopped. Yes, you're right, as you said, I'm sinful. But so what? You want to end my life. What makes you think that you can defeat me? If you died, who else in the Luo clan would dare to act against me? Ours is a world that is ruled by strength. Bryson went berserk, and his expression looked sinister. He shouted, I'll kill Zen, then you and you old mongrel Bridger, Cletus Luo, Hodge Luo, who else dares to be rebellious and say unfavorable things about me. As soon as he finished, blood spurted from Bryson's mouth. Streams of malicious aura oozed from the blood. The deep purple life vitality that was attached to his swords turned to bloody red. Every sword emitted a strong stench of blood as if those swords had slaughtered thousands of creatures. Zen, come on, since you joined Cloud Sect, you must have grown in strength. Let me see whether all you have is a sharp tongue. Chapter 318, Invulnerable Body. As they sensed the smell of blood flowing from Bryson, all the children of the Luo clan fell into shock. What a dense smell of blood. This is not a cultivation method of our Luo clan. Bryson has been practicing the purple light fist, hasn't he? But why did he suddenly switch to another one? It seems to be blood evil force. Isn't it the cultivation method that the blood prisoner is infamous for? Why would Bryson adopt this wicked method? Hodge and the others all turned pale. A while ago, when the C County government attempted to hunt down Blood Prisoner, a criminal infamous for his dark cultivation method, they released a detailed order for arrest that contained an elaborate description of Blood Prisoner's appearance, physical characteristics, and the cultivation method he usually employed. Judging by the scent of blood coming from Bryson, his cultivation method was practically the same as the description of the blood evil force that was written on the official notice. However, Hodge was not perfectly certain about his assumptions, therefore he did not want to jump into conclusions. After all, Hodge and the other members of the Luo clan had never seen Blood Prisoner in person. Also, the details from the order of arrest were insufficient and quite vague for them to correctly identify and recognize the wanted criminal. Although they could not exactly pinpoint the relationship between Bryson and Blood Prisoner, Hodge was sure of one thing, and it was the fact that the cultivation method Bryson was practicing was definitely indecent, dark and forbidden. The sound of swinging swords against each other filled the air. Swish, swish, swish. After Bryson moved his fingers, 12 swords suddenly rose up behind him and shot up to the sky as they left 12 streaks of their trajectory in the air. Fear struck in the eyes of the members of the Luo clan. Looking at the terrifying sight of the flying swords above their heads was like facing death himself. As the swords continued to soar in the sky, the vile smell of dark blood grew stronger as if demons were flying all over the heavens. Many of the Luo clan members had their hearts jump up to their throats as they watched the swords come after Zen to take his life. They all grew cold in terror. They thought, can Zen really fend off those swords? As strong as his power is he truly an equal match against Bryson? But they all knew Zen would head on no matter what. Now that Zen wants to re-establish the Luo clan and save it from falling apart in this abyss, the most crucial task for him is to defeat Bryson. If Zen fails to do so, then all he has ever said will only be empty words. Surely, we, who follow Zen would suffer too. Considering Bryson's temper, perhaps all the people present in the martial arts hall today would be persecuted. So, can Zen really make it? They wondered. Back then when Zen tried to run away from the Luo clan, it was Bryson who forced him back using his flying swords. As each sword came at Zen, he had to take a step back, because at that time, Zen did not have the guts to fight against those swords. However, Zen saw things differently now. Though the scarlet life vitality attached to those swords gave off the strong, sickening odor of blood, Zen could sense that the smell was not pure enough. This only meant Bryson led a half-hearted attack with the swords. Even the life vitality of any collateral descendant from a small noble clan in the imperial capital would be far purer than Bryson's. While the frightened Luo clan members fearfully saw the flying swords like serpents descending from the sky, Zen saw them differently. To Zen Luo, the blood-stenched swords of his uncle Bryson were merely tiny bugs he could easily crush. Zen keenly watched as the 12 swords separated and swooped down and bolted towards him. With a cold smirk on his face, he effortlessly leapt down from the roof, his feet light as a feather. He landed on the courtyard wall, and quickly rushed to Bryson. The swords darted at Zen one after another, trying to impede him as he charged towards Bryson. But Zen was as agile as a monkey. Whenever the swords were about to hit him, Zen always managed to dodge them by a fraction of an inch. The members of the Luo clan were in awe, amazed at what they saw that they almost threw into panic. After all, as far as they were concerned, if Zen made the slightest mistake, he would instantly have 12 holes in his body. The most powerful seniors in the Luo clan were very impressed with Zen's fighting skills. Zen Luo earned their utmost respect when he showed his unfaltering fearlessness as he swiftly moved through the rushing swords that flew past him, dodging them with the finest precision and timing. Only a man who has absolute confidence in his swiftness and moving techniques dare to face 12 flying swords of death. Zen is already that powerful. After running all the way to the end of the wall despite the dangerous attacks, Zen leapt towards a small platform. Just before Zen landed, Bryson let out a sneer. Zen, do you really think you can escape from my swords? Your confidence blinds you. You're too predictable. I calculated that you will be stepping on this platform. Well, now I'll watch how you get away with this one. As Bryson's remark faded, the 12 swords abruptly shot towards that platform. At this point, Zen was still up in the air, unable to duck anywhere. Go to perdition, Bryson angrily shouted. Bryson flashed a mocking smile as he watched Zen struggle to fight through his swords. He thought to himself, this kid is still too young. If Zen had practiced martial arts in Cloud Sect for at least a decade or so, then I'm afraid he could surpass me and I wouldn't be able to equally match him as rival. But now, even though Zen has improved greatly, I have achieved a milestone as well. I have inherited the blood evil force from no other than blood prisoner himself. Now I am not only stronger, but my skills and power have been enhanced as well. Zen, you are not my equal. Unexpectedly, Zen made a move that had the audience shouting in fear, "Ah, garbage, don't jump there." A member of the Luo clan shrieked. Bryson sneaked an escape-proof net on that little platform from the start. How clever of him. Maybe all his previous attacks were well thought of and calculated only to lead Zen to his trap. The Luo clan members could only imagine the worst that could happen in this clash. It seemed as if the tables had been turned and Bryson took over the upper hand of the battle. Some of them even closed their eyes because they knew they wouldn't be able to bear the unholy image of dripping blood from 12 swords piercing through Zen's body. Even the seniors of the Luo clan who, just a few moments ago, were speechless in amazement, were at a loss for words for what they were seeing right now. Disappointedly, they sighed, "We never thought Zen could fall into Bryson's trap so easily." At this point of the battle, Melvin and Tristan nervously had their fists clenched tightly, praying for a miracle to come even if Zen's chances of winning seemed so slim. Meanwhile, standing at the back of the crowd, Yan could not help but shake her head and heave with a sigh. With Zen's almost indestructible body, those swords would not hurt him even if they deeply pierce into his flesh. I wonder what kind of expression will be on Bryson's face once he realizes Zen will beat him to death. Yan smirked. Bryson was feeling so thrilled that he could feel the surge of adrenaline rushing through his veins. He wanted to give Zen a more tragic death, and so he wielded more life vitality to increase the fury of his swords by 50%. With this overwhelming power, not only could the swords pierce through Zen's flesh, but they could stab all the way through his body and leave 24 holes of free-flowing blood. Once the flying swords lunged at Zen, the excitement in Bryson's face faded in an instant. Suddenly, his expression grew bemused, bewildered at what he just saw before his eyes. How come Zen didn't get penetrated by my flying swords? It seems like the swords just bounced off the moment they touched Zen's flesh, doesn't it? But how can it be possible? There is a slim possibility that Zen's protective life vitality has warded them off. But I saw it clearly that what those flying swords targeted was Zen's corporeal body. Could a man's corporeal body be that invulnerable? No way. Those flying swords are propelled by the blood evil force. Although the blood evil force is a tier 3 cultivation method, this cultivation method pursues the way of killing, allowing me to get twofold progress with half the effort. Its power is way more formidable than those at the same tier. It's almost as powerful as a tier 4 cultivation method. The members of the Luo clan were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they just saw. In fact, they felt relieved that Zen suddenly regained the upper hand. His performance was just beyond their imagination. They were in shock, but deep down inside they were all cheering Zen on. In the eyes of those members of the Luo clan, Bryson was a tyrant with supreme power. His power and strength were so overwhelming, that he could effortlessly end the life of anyone in the Luo clan. Because of this, no one dared disobey him. If they did, only one thing awaited them, death. However, when Bryson launched this full-power strike, Zen fought it off simply with his indestructible body. The 12 flying swords just ricocheted off of Zen's body, not even leaving a single cut nor a simple scratch. This has to be the invulnerable body mentioned in the legends, mumbled one of the members of the Luo clan. Even when Bridger, who was dim-sighted from old age, saw this miraculous scene, 2 lines of tears rolled down from his eyes. He then exclaimed with his old, husky voice, "Indeed, justice always prevails. Now, Mike can truly rest in peace knowing he now has a worthy successor." Glaring at the flabbergasted Bryson, Zen demanded coldly, "You tell me, how should I dodge you? Actually, I never even considered running away from you. Though you and I are both at the 3rd rank of the nature level, the gap between you and me is beyond your imagination." Zen hopped from the small platform once again and dashed over towards Bryson. Still, Bryson was not to be underestimated. Since his strongest strike did not turn out the way he pictured it to be, he could tell that Zen's strength had now grown out of his league. Bryson's body grew cold out of fear. With the overwhelming fright that was surging through him right now, only one thing popped up in his head: escape. But how could Bryson outrun the indestructible Zen? When Zen picked up his speed, he caught up to Bryson within barely a second. During this desperate moment, Bryson had no choice but to yell, "Help me!" But at this point, Zen already landed behind Bryson. He muttered icily, "Even if a king were here, he couldn't get you out of this now." Zen smacked his fist into Bryson's back. The impact of his punch sent Bryson crashing through a house nearby. Suddenly, a chilling voice sounded not too far. Who dares to hurt my disciple? I'll eat you up alive. Chapter 319. Do you really think you're that strong? A blood-colored figure was dashing from a distance, and not far behind it was Ken Luo following the figure. Of course, Ken must have heard Bryson's cry, so he came running to his brother's aid. What the heck? How could Zen defeat Bryson? Ken could not believe it at first. But before he could even realize what just happened, he heard Blood Prisoner called Bryson his disciple. When did Bryson become the Blood Prisoner's disciple? Although Ken knew that Bryson had kept the Blood Prisoner in the Luo clan's cellar in order to fight against Zen, he still didn't agree with the Blood Prisoner's cultivating method. The Blood Prisoner got his strength from eating people's flesh and blood. It was a heinous act, thus Ken believed it was the wrong path to take. Cooperating with a person like the Blood Prison was the same as asking a tiger for its fur. Any person who came close to the Blood Prisoner would eventually be eaten. But for Bryson to take such a risk, Ken knew that his brother had no other choice. But Ken didn't know that Bryson had become the Blood Prisoner's disciple and started to learn the evil practicing method. Still puzzled, Ken kept following the Blood Prisoner without any second thought. After all, it was necessary to immediately deal with the matter at hand. Zen hit Bryson by only one hand. With the intensity of the attack, Bryson smashed into a house but was immediately followed by Zen. Although the latter used only half of his overall strength, Bryson still found it difficult to dodge the attack. Soon, the members of the Luo clan saw Zen pulling a man by his collar as he walked out of the ruined house. Despite the man's face covered in blood, everyone recognized that it was Bryson Luo. Zen had defeated Bryson with just one casual punch. The members of the Luo clan were satisfied with the sight of the defeated Bryson. They had clearly underestimated Zen's strength before. Suddenly, the blood-colored figure appeared. The faces of all the members of the Luo clan turned pale when they realized who the blood figure was. His body was red all over and it looked like the man had only flesh and blood with no skin at all. The strong odor of blood reminded everyone of torture. Even without looking at his face, everyone quickly recognized him. The notorious evil man was described in the official announcement in detail, and the moment he appeared, the members of the Luo clan started murmuring about him. The Blood Prisoner. It's the Blood Prisoner. He's actually staying in our house. A young man exclaimed. The Blood Prisoner just called Bryson his disciple. Has Bryson made the Blood Prisoner his master? Another one asked in surprise. So that must be the reason. I realize that Bryson has a strong smell of blood in him. He finally learned, blood evil force, from the Blood Prisoner. So that explains the sudden disappearance of people from our clan. Bryson was practicing, the third man said aloud. The members of the Luo clan were not as strong as Zen, but they were not foolish. Although Bryson tried to shake off the fact that people had been disappearing in the clan, he could not stop people from suspecting when the number of missing people started to increase. So, in order to cover it up, he forbade people from talking about it. Though it was strange, no one imagined that Bryson and the Blood Prisoner had something to do with the disappearances. But seeing the Blood Prisoner, people finally realized what happened before. The evil person who ate live human beings was living among them, and the master of the Luo clan had actually learned the cultivation method of the Blood Prisoner. The Blood Prisoner drifted in the air, his hair waving back off his head. He stared at Zen with his red eyes, then licked his lips and shouted to Zen, "Put my disciple down and let him go. If you follow my order, I will show you mercy by killing you before I eat your body. But if you don't, I will swallow you alive and you'll know the pain of dying slowly." The Blood Prisoner had a mania for eating people alive. He relished seeing them struggling and enjoyed listening as they screamed in pain. Fear could make a person's body more appetizing to the Blood Prisoner. That was why he would always start with a person's hands or feet and look at the expression on their faces as he gradually ate them alive. "Swallow me alive," Zen repeated the Blood Prisoner's words as if mocking him. He sneered at the Blood Prisoner, "Aren't you afraid that your teeth may break if you eat me? You fool, you're only at the 3rd grade of the nature level. Do you know my level?" The Blood Prisoner replied to Zen. A cold smile crossed Zen's face. "You're just at the 1st level of the illuminating soul realm. Why are you so arrogant? Do you really think you're that strong?" Zen asked. He sneered at the Blood Prisoner and laughed hysterically. Hearing Zen's remarks, the Blood Prisoner was dumbfounded. He thought Zen was only a nature creature and didn't know what the illuminating soul realm was at all. He asked such a question to intimidate Zen. Unexpectedly, Zen could exactly tell his strength level but didn't even panic. The blood prisoner suddenly felt something peculiar with Zen. But the blood prisoner could not tell what it was. The gap in terms of strength between a nature creature and an illuminating soul realm practitioner was huge. Although the blood prisoner hadn't completely recovered, he was much stronger than the creatures at the same level since he was practicing the ways of killing skills. Normally, a nature creature would be intimidated to even look at him. But since when could a nature creature look down at an illuminating soul realm practitioner? However, the blood prisoner knew very little about Zen. In the Cloud sect, there were all kinds of talents with strengths beyond ordinary people's imagination. So, defeating a cultivator at a higher level was not rare inside the Cloud sect. Of course, the case where a nature creature, like Zen, challenged an illuminating soul realm practitioner and actually won was a rare spectacle. In the small counties of the eastern region, the difference in strength amongst the cultivators was not evident, hence it was impossible for a nature creature to challenge an illuminating soul realm practitioner. That was why the blood prisoner could not understand Zen and why the latter didn't even panic upon knowing his strength. Is it possible that there is someone stronger behind him? The blood prisoner wondered. His strength could be amongst the top in the faraway counties of the eastern region, but compared to the disciples of the Cloud sect, he was amongst the ordinary. The blood prisoner wasn't as strong as Dick from the Black Rock Peak even when he was in his best psyche. Not to mention that he had suffered damages already. For Zen, defeating the blood prisoner was a piece of cake. You're such a fool, let's see if you can keep up with your arrogance once I chomp on you. Just after the blood prisoner finished his remark, some string-like blood came out from the bare part of his body. The scene was dreadful as if the blood prisoner pressed his own blood out by force. The blood strings blew directly toward Zen. Zen was still holding Bryson by the latter's collar. He said coldly to Bryson, "I thought you were as cruel as a beast. But now I can see that you are eviler than a beast. How could you learn evil method from such a devil? I can tell you, Bryson, you are not only evil but also more foolish than a beast." Bryson felt Zen's hands seized him tightly. He had no other hope but for the blood prisoner to kill Zen and save him. If the blood prisoner fails, I will surely be dead, Bryson thought in his mind. Being seized by Zen, Bryson had lost much energy and he felt as weak as an old dog. But despite that, he still didn't want to give up hope. In his eyes, if the blood prisoner was willing to act then he had nothing to worry about. If Zen would be killed, then Bryson could still be the master of the Luo clan. You will end up being eaten by the blood prisoner. There's no way you can escape that. Bryson laughed crazily. Bryson seemed to be mad although was almost out of breath. Is that so? Zen said calmly. He had totally ignored the blood strings and went on talking to Bryson, I will let you live to see how weak this man you're counting on is. After finishing his remarks, Zen pulled Bryson away and walked towards the blood strings. The blood prisoner was determined to defeat Zen in an instant. But after he heard Zen's remarks, his eyes turned crueler. He said coldly, how can a nature creature be arrogant in front of me? People look up at you like you're a rare gem. I hope you will never regret it. Regret what? Zen shook his head. He didn't try to avoid the blood strings, instead, he offered his hand and allowed the blood strings to wrap around his hand. Seeing how the events unfold, the members of the Luo clan felt nervous but surprised at the same time. In their eyes, it was expected for Zen to defeat Bryson since the first had entered the Cloud sect. But defeating the blood prisoner was a different story. Even if Zen was the strongest amongst the Cloud sect, the blood prisoner was still an illuminating soul realm practitioner. Even if the blood prisoner was only at the beginning level of the illuminating soul realm, he was as strong as a warrior god in Sea County. A nature creature could make huge achievements inside Sea County, so what more could an illuminating soul realm master do? Why did Zen allow the blood strings to wrap around his hand? Why didn't he fight back? Wasn't he afraid of being captured by the blood prisoner? If Zen told them that he was confident to defeat the blood prisoner and that letting the blood strings wrap around his hand was on purpose, they wouldn't believe it. They were confused as to why Zen was so calm and didn't even avoid being captured by the blood strings at all. Chapter 320, The Malicious Aura Crystal. Zen had resisted Bryson's flying sword's attack easily with his bodily strength. In fact, he had beaten Bryson so hard that the latter had gotten seriously injured. This had shocked the members of the Luo family, who were now admiring Zen's strength heavily. Initially, they had thought highly of Zen, but just like what had happened in the All Peaks competition, no one really believed that Zen could defeat Dick of the Illuminating Soul Realm with his strength at a mere grade 2 of the nature level. However, that was then. Right now, Zen was at grade 3 of the nature level, but he was facing an opponent at the illuminating soul realm, the blood prisoner, wanted by the government and chased for a long time by Cloud Sect. Unless someone actually witnessed it, it would have been impossible to believe the outcome. After the blood streaks released by the blood prisoner entangled Zen's arm, they tried to enter Zen's skin, like several thousand worms or centipedes trying to crawl inside. His own refined blood as well as strong malicious aura was hidden in those streaks, which could even cut into an iron plate several centimeters thick. The blood prisoner could suck the flesh and blood from people whose body had been engulfed by those powerful rope-like streaks. But that was under usual circumstances. Normally, the person whose blood and flesh were swallowed by him would have become a shrunken, sucked skeleton, miserable and quite dead. Scream, bloke, let out your sad and shrill cries. The blood prisoner's terrible face without any skin on it shrieked and showed a merciless smile. But just as his streaks tried to enter Zen's body, the blood prisoner suddenly felt that something was horribly wrong. This time, his invincible blood streaks couldn't penetrate this pathetic man's skin. How was that possible? To be honest, the blood prisoner experienced more of Zen's strength than Bryson. Bryson had tried to kill Zen with his flying swords, which were being controlled only with a little bit of life vitality. After the swords had bounced away from Zen's body, Bryson had thought that it was impossible and was wondering whether Zen had a special treasure to protect his body. But the blood prisoner had directly used the blood streaks made from his own life vitality to penetrate Zen's skin. He could have directly gathered the information reflected from those blood streaks. The intensity and the strength of Zen's skin was far beyond his expectation. His all-conquering blood streaks were completely ineffective on Zen. When the blood prisoner was stunned, Zen sneered, "You must be tired from all that floating about in the air. Why don't you come down?" Suddenly he made a fist with his hand entangled by the blood streaks and pulled with his mighty strength, which had surprised even the blood prisoner himself. At the same time, he threw a punch at the ground severely. Bang! The great force with which his hand hit the ground left a big hole. Before the sound of this punch could be completely dissipated, another loud bang was heard. The blood prisoner, pulled down from midair by Zen's heave, fell heavily on the ground at a furious pace and made that second bang. Countless cracks appeared on the ground and a human-shaped hole got indented not far away from Zen. From the hole the disgusting smell of blood started rising continuously. After a short while, a volcano of blood burst out from that hole suddenly and it splashed on the ground all over the periphery of that hole. The slate on the ground blackened immediately, and several furious hisses could be heard. In an instant, the slate melted. The blood volcano had a strong corroding effect. In no time, a hand made of pure blood reached out from the hole. When the blood prisoner emerged, he was covered completely by a layer of crimson-colored light, so akin to blood as to be easily confusable with it. He was like a creature which had been born in a blood pool. "I am surprised. Can a simple disciple of Cloud Sect be so powerful? You are just at grade 3 of the nature level, but you can force me to burn my blood and do such a miracle." The prisoner's face was also covered with that disgusting light and only red slits were visible where his eyes should have been. At that moment, he didn't look like human anymore, but a blood ogre. Seeing that the blood prisoner had changed and the momentum on his body had increased greatly, Zen was also astonished. It appeared that the killing way was really a shortcut. If it was not so easy to be swallowed by the malicious aura when practicing in the killing way, nobody knew how many warriors in the world would take this way. The blood prisoner was only at grade 1 of the illuminating soul realm, and his foundation was not as steady as the disciples of Cloud Sect, but he could promote his strength greatly after he used the secret method to arouse the malicious aura in his body. Nobody knew how many creatures the blood prisoner had killed across his years of practicing and hiding. Each time he killed someone, he could accumulate more malicious aura which he could later utilize. With that in mind, Zen really was not in the mood to talk with him. He moved suddenly and started a weird step. Lifting the streamer sword in his hand lightly, he chopped his enemy, hoping to end him once and for all. Die! The sharp streamer sword chopped with a silver radiance and the blade rushed towards the blood prisoner. "That's going to be of no use." The blood prisoner waved his hand. Layers upon layers of blood-colored crystals suddenly emerged from his arm, like blood-red emeralds, and formed a thick armor on his arm. There was a strong malicious aura hidden in each of those crystals and the sword couldn't possibly cut through them all. Crack! Zen's sword radiance chopped several crystals to pieces but was blocked at last. The blood prisoner sneered, "Your strength really surprises me, but you are bound to be my delicacy." Poof! 6 blood-red bone spikes emerged from the blood prisoner's body instantly. Each of them was several feet long, and resembled the disgusting legs of a spider. They surrounded Zen immediately. "Be a part of my blood and flesh," the blood prisoner ordered and laughed wildly. The 6 bone spikes tried to hit Zen. Just at that moment, a beautiful young girl suddenly floated in and casually asked, "Zen, need some help?" The blood prisoner hadn't even been able to detect that the young girl was there before hearing her voice. When did this young girl come? Was she here the entire time? Why didn't I, or rather, why couldn't I notice her? Is this girl a cultivator of the illuminating soul realm? Who is she? Is there actually a young girl of the illuminating soul realm among the members of Luo family? Even though Zen's strength had astonished the blood prisoner, this guy was a nature creature and couldn't defeat him. The blood prisoner wasn't powerful enough, but he was still able to fly. Zen was a nature creature and couldn't catch up with him, so the blood prisoner had a great advantage and confidence when fighting against him. But it would have been different if Zen, along with all his strength, also had the help of a master of the illuminating soul realm. And this young girl was at a cultivation level several grades higher than him. The blood prisoner didn't have the confidence to defeat her. "No thank you sis. I don't need any help. I am going to end this battle now," Zen replied sweetly with a smile. What did that mean? The blood prisoner couldn't understand. Zen thought he could end this battle without the girl's help. His tone suggested that he was about to kill the blood prisoner at any time. Is this guy so naive as to believe that? Before the blood prisoner could recover from his shock and come to his senses, he saw another silver light flashing in Zen's hand and rushing towards his face. The silver light was the broken flying knife. It came instantly and unexpectedly. Hurriedly, the blood prisoner tried to dodge, but before he could even move, he felt a severe pain which almost stopped his mind. Boo! The broken flying knife flew right across the blood prisoner's neck, dismembering it from the body as easily as hot lava through butter. Fresh blood spurted from his broken neck. The blood prisoner's head rolled down to one side, and the gloomy red light in his eyes dimmed slowly. It turned out that it was in fact him, who was too naive. Seeing the inclining dead body of the blood prisoner, Zen shook his head. When it came to plain and simple fighting capacity, the blood prisoner, with his ability to turn into a blood ogre, was powerful indeed. At the very least, he could have easily defeated Dick and was perhaps even qualified to fight against Jacques. Unfortunately, warriors practicing in common places other than the Cloud sect had very few resources around them and were rarely able to find a chance to cultivate the soul. Such warriors couldn't have resisted Zen's spiritual thorn attack. If Zen had wanted to end the fight sooner, he could have easily used that attack and turned the blood prisoner's mind into a complete mess. The latter would have been left a complete idiot in that case. On the other hand, warriors who practiced and grew up in Cloud sect had either a powerful soul or a special way to protect the soul. After the blood prisoner had died, malicious aura emerged from his body and rose continuously for some time. Generally, the malicious aura was colorless, but if being strong enough, it would often be a bright shade of red. And given a large enough quantity condensing all at once, it could even turn fresh red. However, the malicious aura of the blood prisoner was even worse, dark red. He had taken in so much malicious aura. How many creatures had this guy killed? Zen thought indifferently. The malicious aura entered Zen's body continuously and gathered inside. If one were to compare, the malicious aura Zen had gathered after killing those people just now was hardly worth mentioning against this large amount from the prisoner's body. It was a long while before the aura in the body of the blood prisoner had finished gathering into Zen's. It finally turned into 3 dark red crystals. 3 blood-colored crystals stand for 3 wisps of malicious aura, I believe. Zen could feel that these 3 blood-colored crystals had a special energy, which was made from the curse of thousands of creatures, cast before they died. It was obvious that the curse of dying people was not something nice to hold on to. However, everything had its advantages and disadvantages. The malicious aura could devour a person's body if kept long enough, but if the person made use of it, its powers could be significant and terrible. For example, the blood prisoner didn't have a foundation as solid as Dick had, but the strength he had burst was far more powerful than Dick's, which was the result of the malicious aura. These 3 wisps of malicious aura are hidden in my body, but they can be harmful to me. Fortunately, I have connection with the Killing Sword Mountain and can keep them on the mountain. Zen ordered in his mind. The 3 wisps of malicious aura disappeared from inside his body in an instant, and appeared on the mountain. He sensed a new energy flow somewhere in his body. Wow, it looks like it's super easy to save the malicious aura on the Killing Sword Mountain. I wonder how much malicious aura I can save there. While Zen was lost in his thoughts, a figure standing not far tried to flee. This was Ken. It was beyond his imagination that Zen could have killed the prisoner so easily. After all, the blood prisoner was being chased by the government and Cloud Sect jointly. He was supposed to be almost invincible in these counties. The government and Cloud Sect had sent several powerful men to surround and attack the blood prisoner, but he had still managed to run away. Now his neck had been cut off by Zen in an instant. Ken felt a chill running through his back. In his mind, he couldn't think of anything else except to flee. However, just as he had moved a few steps, a young girl blocked his way out of nowhere. She had a really big smile. Yan asked in a low voice, "Uncle, where are you going?"